We appreciate Aaron and Mike being here representing the Finance Committee. And I would say, why don't we dive right in? That's all right.
Yep, I just turned that on. So let me start sharing.
You might need to just slide it a little closer to you. It's not that hot.
Okay. All right. So as the Finance Committee, we've worked through a lot of different proposals from the current broker, Miller Wade. Select Health is the current carrier that the city provides for its employees. You can see up here the current plan design costs $6,600 bucks a month for 3 employees that are participating, and the proposal from Select Health was to increase the rates by an additional 12%. That's not unreasonable for the market. That's common in a lot of businesses. There are ways that some businesses can have much lower rates. I manage Canyon View Medical, so we take good care of our employees, and our employees' health is better than perhaps others. And so our rates were not that high, but I know there's other rates that are as high as 19% increases. There are some companies that are able to actually have decreases in premiums because they manage their employees' health so well. But that's on larger scale. When you've got 3 employees, you're either a good year or a bad year. But anyway, so as we looked at it and said, what could we do to potentially try and save the city some money or try and improve plan design, provide additional options to employees? There was a few different options that were presented. One was a 50% savings, but this is a really goofy model it's really not worth looking at, but it is something out there. It's a health share product that's not actually insurance. It leaves subscribers, members wanting, and leaves doctors frustrated in dealing with these type plans. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. Aetna had a proposal, but this is the lowest possible rate you could get. It would be a 17% decrease, but they required all employees to fill out a health questionnaire. And once they filled out a health questionnaire, if there was anything in the health of any of the family members, then those rates would go up. And so when we talked to them over the phone and said, well, we know that there's at least some health issues, they said, oh yeah, then that rate's going to end up being an increase, and a substantial increase. So we ignored that one. The same thing here. And then we get to these other rates, and you can see that those are 40% increases as we go across, 40, 50, 60, 70% increases. So we looked at all those options and said, these really aren't good options. So what we decided then is we also reached out to PEHP, and PEHP does not work through brokers, so we couldn't access their information through Miller Wade, but we reached out to PEHP directly. Tim Larson on the Finance Committee reached out to them and got some quotes from PEHP. And so they came back with some proposals that we feel are actually going to be the best proposals to move forward with. And they have a lot of different plans. There are the traditional plans, which is what our employees are currently on. And then they have high deductible health plans. And as we talked with the employees, the nice thing about a high deductible health plan is it offers a little bit higher deductible, hence the definition of it, but also pairs it with a health savings account. And the health savings account can be a really valuable tool for saving up money to cover expenses over the long time, and actually be a very valuable investment tool. And so we recommend moving to a high deductible health plan paired with a health savings account. And we'll show you how we can actually end up saving some money for the city in the process, and we think make the employees happier as well. So if I go here is the current plan design, some of the basics and the premiums for it, and the renewal rate. If we take that rate and annualize it, and this is per employee. So we've got
average.
Yeah, this is average together.
One was like a lot higher and one was a little bit lower.
Yeah. So when you look at it from a city perspective, you can say, all right, we're actually spending 3 times this because this is 3 employees times 29,000. So it's nearly $100,000 a year that we're spending on providing medical benefits for just 3 employees. And you go, holy mackerel. But that's, it is on the higher end, but it's also not outrageous. There are other plans that can be much more expensive. And the city is in the public sector, and public employers oftentimes pay a much higher percentage of the premium. In this case, Woodland Hills City is paying 100% of the premium for the employees. That is definitely high. And there are other cities that we talked with that had a little bit lower, like some, Jody, I think 90% was maybe the lowest.
100% for the employee, but then 80% for
Oh, yeah.
families.
So they have a plan design where they'll pay 100% of the premium for the employee only if it's only a single employee that wants insurance. But if they want to have their family in, then they have to pay the extra amount to have their family premiums. And that makes it kind of goofy because the family premium is a whole lot more than just a single employee. We used to have our employees that way at Canyon View. We went away from that about 10 years ago, and we just said, we're going to give everybody coverage. And back then, I think in order to be able to afford it, we started at 60%. And we just said, we'll cover whatever plan you need at 60%, rather than having employee at 100 and then family at nothing, and you have to do the other things. Anyway, so, but as we talked with various other cities, the employer cost sharing was definitely much higher than the private sector. But as we looked at the various options, again, we've got a 12.7% increase is what is being proposed right now. And what we're looking at is two different options. One, so the current plan design is an 80-20 co-insurance and a $750 deductible, but the traditional plan has first dollar coverage for the employees, meaning when they go to see the doctor for a regular office visit, urgent care, whatever like that, then all they have to do is pay their copay, which is a flat fee. Whereas with the high deductible plan, they will be responsible for the entire cost of those visits other than preventive visits. Preventive visits under the Affordable Care Act are covered 100%, regardless of whether you're on a high deductible or a traditional plan. But if you're going for anything else, then you're either going to have a flat copay or the full amount until your deductible is met. So as we look at this, we say, all right, well, the employee has a $750 deductible for the individual and $2,250 for the family under the current plan. So we've looked at two different proposals, and one would be an individual deductible at $1,600 a month, $1,650, sorry, for the year, and $3,300 for the year for the family deductible. That premium is cheaper to the tune of about $4,200 a year cheaper for the employer to purchase this for the employees. But it does have an increase in the deductible. But what we propose doing is saying, well, let's contribute some money to an HSA for you rather than just leaving you the flexibility. So employees can defer up to the IRS limit for a family's $8,350, if I remember correctly, this year. But the employer can contribute to that. So with the savings of $4,200, then we could contribute to the HSA so the employee has some money in their pocket to cover that deductible that is now a higher deductible. And in fact, if you look at it, we do here, we're saying the $1,300 minus the $1,650 deductible. So that means the employee's actually out $350 out of their own pocket, but they were previously out $750. So now the employee actually is saving money because they have less deductible. Now it's a little bit of an apples and oranges misnomer here. I don't want to try and bait and switch because again, the normal doctor's office visit would be covered just with a copay versus now it would be the full cost of the doc's visit. So let's just roughly say $100 for a urgent care visit would be a 25 or 35. I don't know what the current copay amount is on the current plan, but that would quickly be satisfied with the HSA by hitting the deductibles. And if it also on the top end, the deductible is $3,300. But again, if we were to contribute $1,300 is what we were suggesting, then $3,300 minus the $2,250 would still give us on the family deductible It'd be $2,000 out of pocket. So 3,300 minus 1,300 gives us 2,000, and 2,000 is less than 2,250 by $250. So again, their deductible exposure is lower with the HSA funding. The biggest thing where their savings, though, is currently, although it's a low deductible, it's a very high out-of-pocket maximum. And so currently, if there was a bad catastrophic accident or a chronic illness like a cancer or heart attack or something like that, they would be on the hook up to $17,000 of out-of-pocket before they hit their max on the family plan. But with the high deductible plan, the out-of-pocket max is only $6,600. So they've got a much lower exposure if there is a catastrophic thing going on. So they save $10,000 on the out-of-pocket if they were to have a bad situation, and they save $250 if it's just kind of more run-of-the-mill stuff. Doing all that would save the city 10%, 9.8% compared to the renewal rate. It will still cost a little bit more than what we're currently paying. It would be 1.3% more than what we're currently paying, but it's a heck of a lot better than a 12% increase. Now, the other option we looked at is saying, well, what if we increase the deductibles even higher and made an even higher deductible, but gave them even more in their HSA? So this works out if an employee is relatively healthy and you say, okay, if you're relatively healthy, we can either spend more on premiums, and the premiums are going to be kept by the insurer regardless of what happens with claims. Or we can say, take those same dollars and give them to you to put in an HSA so you have it available if you need it. But if you don't need it, you can save it and you can invest it. And after 2 or 3 years of good health, you have more than enough money in your HSA, even to cover your maximum out of pocket, to where it doesn't matter what happens this year. We've got enough money to cover anything that happens to our family. I personally like that option because although we do have some health needs in our family, and me being the primary one as a diabetic myself, I'm the one that uses the majority of the healthcare expenditures of our family. I can still save more money that way. But some families may prefer to have the lower deductibles rather than have the higher deductible and more HSA funds. So as we're bringing it to the city, we've got 2 recommendations to either go with the option 2 under PEHP is a $3,300 deductible versus a $6,000 individual. Sorry, I said that wrong. $1,615 individual versus $3,000 individual, and $3,300 family and $6,000 family. And then the respective out-of-pocket maximums. And we just randomly, if you will, made up these numbers on the HSA contributions in order to save there. This works out to be $50 a paycheck. The employees are paid every 2 weeks. So $50 times 26 pay periods a year would be $1,300, and we would do $100. And we can move these numbers around any way you wanted by contributing more in the HSA or even reducing the employer contribution and making the employee come up with it. It all ends up being the same dollars. In my business, we call it squeezing the balloon. The balloon has a fixed volume. The costs are fixed. It's just how we squeeze it within that. We can play with those all we want. But it ends up being the same budgetary spend for the city one way or the other. And the employees can then do with those funds how they want. As we were talking at the finance committee meeting earlier, last week, we talked with Chris and Ted, and I believe, Ben, you had some conversations with Toby today.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the employees' absolute preferences were, because at that point, this was the first time for Chris and Ted to see it and go back and talk with their spouses. And maybe you guys have had some further conversation and can now say what the employees would prefer. Either way, it's going to save the city money. It's just a question of which they would rather have more risk and more money to cover it, or less risk and less money to cover.
Right.
Well, I'm going to jump in here because it's been kind of a short time frame.
Mayor, I think your mic might be off.
Your mic,
Like,
just get it closer.
So it's been kind of a short time frame to try to process all this information. And I can't thank you guys, finance committee, for accommodating. So my initial thinking, and Mike, I relayed this to you earlier, that I was inclined toward recommending and asking the council for option
Two.
um, because I had felt that there was a fairly broad consensus that that was the preferred. Because the way I see it is that in the public sector, you know, any of our employees would get paid more. And so I do believe that people that come to work for government, they tend to trade off wages in exchange for benefits. And I think that's what our employees do here. And not to call any one particular employee out, but we recently managed to fool Ted Mickelson into coming and working as a public works director, and the benefits package was a big part of that. So that's been something that I consider the highest priority is to be consistent in that respect, so that it's not something that is a situation. So what in talking. Well, I haven't talked with Toby, but I have, heard what Toby's disposition is on this, but I have talked to Ted and I've talked to Chris. And anyway, my initial thinking was that the option 5 is the one that everyone wanted, but I actually want to walk that back, and I think that option 2 is option 2 is the one that everyone wanted, and I'm going to walk that back and say that option 5 is probably the better option if we can throw in dental, which my understanding is part of, generally speaking, and Jody was telling me this afternoon that we got we actually got some good pricing on some possible dental coverage, and then to up the HSA contribution to $3,000. So I'd like your feedback on that.
Yeah, so if we were to change this to 3,000,
So I bet he can plug that in.
so that would make it so from an individual deductible exposure, the employees don't have to worry about anything because the employer is putting the money in throughout the course of the year. On the family deductible, that means that they're exposed by $750 more because they've got 3,000 compared to 6,000. They had 2,250, so the difference between 3,000 plus 2,250 is 750 further. But they've got $3,000 that they can use to be able to cover that. From a price perspective, that would still save the city 15% over the course of the year compared to the renewal, and 4% compared to the current spend. So it's definitely something doable. If we go 3,000 divided by 26 pay periods, that'd be $115 per pay period that goes in. The only one little caveat about this is if you're somebody like me that is diabetic and you've got to get your insulin and your supplies and everything, that first refill of the year,
It's a killer.
it's a few $1,000s, and that HSA isn't available right away. A flexible spending account is available January 1, and then it's deducted out of your paycheck the rest of the year. Whereas with an HSA, it's funded every pay period and it builds up. So maybe by May, enough money has built up to reimburse yourself the cost of the supply order that you had to do at the beginning of the year. But that's something you can get used to. I mean, I've been diabetic for 25 years and just to manage my healthcare expenditures. And you do get reimbursed. It's just a cash flow thing that you're managing through the process.
Aaron, I have a question. Thank you for doing all of this. I know it's a lot of work just to not only to figure out which one we're going with, but then to analyze each one on such a specific, on all these specifics. So the mayor suggested adding dental. Is that at all part of what you have done? And then also, then are we looking at that difference between the HSA and the flexible spending, or is that something they do personally?
So flexible spending is something that people do individually, and they can do that completely, not on their own. It would have to be set up through a group plan, but the amount of money that they want to elect is completely up to the individuals to do. And that's just handled through the payroll processing.
The flex is
It is, but there is a rollover feature that the IRS allows. The employer may or may not have it. We have it in our plan for our employees. Currently, the IRS limit is $660, can be rolled over year to year. So if you want to play it safe, you say, I'm going to elect $660 because even if I don't use it, then I can roll it over. But anything greater than $600, I run the risk of losing it. But there's also that much more tax advantage to having it if you know you're a family that's going to have a lot of orthodontia or various other things through the course of the year. So there is value in those flexible spending accounts, even on top of the HSA. Now, we do not have the dental costs in here. As I understand, currently the dental coverage is 100% paid by the by the employee. So that doesn't factor into what it costs the city at all. Now, you could say, we want to offer this as part of the employer package and pay for it as a city because we're saving 15%. So let's use some of that savings to offer an even richer benefit to the employees by now covering the cost, whether it's 100% or a portion thereof, of the dental and the vision premiums. They're pennies on the dollar compared to the medical premiums. We didn't have those numbers last Thursday when we were discussing it. I understand Jody has since then got those numbers. I don't have them to plug in here, but you could elect to do that if you wanted to.
And that actually is what I was aiming for, is to make that a benefit that we offer. Just because, again, trying to strike the balance between getting and keeping top talent and being competitive with what the market.
Jody just texted it to me. It's $113.84
Per month?
per employee.
per employee. The only thing is we would have to amend our employee handbook because right now it says that it's employee needs to be paid by the employee.
Now, is dental subject to open enrollment? I thought that you could enroll in dental companies at any time. I thought that in our business, really, I thought that's what we were told. My office manager is not. But I don't know. Don't rely me for that. But it might be something that we don't need to even do. That we've got the open enrollment on medical that we're closing on fast. So.
Well, so here's one of the key things is when the employer pays for it, then the employer wants to be able to set the budget for the year. If the employee is paying for it, then the employee may be more flexible of saying when I want to sign up for it. But it also depends on the carrier because the carrier may say, I want a full 12 months of premiums. I don't want you to just wait until the month before you know you're going to go in and get a root canal and then sign up for dental coverage. I need to have a full 12 months of premium in order to give you coverage during that time. So we'd have to check with PEHP and find out what their requirements are. And then also decide as an employer if you're going to say we're willing to cover that. So if we added, as I just did the math here, 113.84 times 12, if I add that into the $3,000, so that would still save the city 10% over the course of the year compared to the renewal, although it would be a little bit more.
So explain that 10% savings. It was 14. What is that what we compared to what we paid last year?
No,
So
what
there's
the
two
new
different numbers
price
up
would
here.
be.
So
New policy.
right here, this is what you're currently paying
Okay.
is $26,560
Okay.
on average per
Okay.
employee. So under the proposal we're
All of
looking
that.
at now, we would pay $26,835. So it's gone up by 1%, but compared to
keep
what the
the current
renewal is,
plan.
if we were to stay
I
with what
see.
we were planning
Okay,
on,
I see.
stay with the current plan,
It's
with
quite a
the
bit
employees
different.
not having any dental coverage by the employer, it would save us 10%. And the employees would say, woohoo, now I got a benefit that I didn't previously have, or I had, but I had to pay for.
Yeah, and I didn't appreciate when I proposed dental, I didn't appreciate how much that would knock back that savings. I mean, then it's kind of a wash. So I actually,
And it's something that you could look at as doing a stepwise fashion. If we want to improve the employee benefits this year by providing an HSA and a high deductible health plan, we actually feel that although it's a higher deductible, it's an improvement in the employee benefits because they've now got some more money accessible through the HSA. And then over time, you could potentially increase that HSA funding even more. You could add in the dental benefits, the vision benefits. I would say on a rough order of magnitude, like we're talking $113 per month versus the medical premium is, let's see here, medical, that's the annual. So it's $1,800 a month. So it's a tenfold less. And the vision premiums, Jody, are like $40 a month or something?
What was 1630?
16. Okay. So it's a tenfold magnitude each time. Thousands, hundreds, tens for medical, dental, and vision
And I
to offer
think
those.
you might want time, because I had dental through my employer and none of the dentists would take it. Like they said it didn't pay anything, it didn't cover anything.
Yeah, they are.
And so I think you'd want to, before you commit to a dental for the employees, it might not be worth it for them. You know, the city would be paying 5% more and it might not even be something that would be a benefit to them. So I think you just need to do, you'd want to check and make sure that that's a good dental
And it's something that
insurance.
you can have a conversation with the employees and say, look, our budget that we've approved for employee benefits is, let's just roughly say $100,000. I can either give you more HSA funding, or I can give you dental coverage. But if you're not going to use the dental coverage, then you'd be better off with more HSA funding. Or we can give you a lower deductible, or we can give you higher deductibles and even more HSA funding. But it's all the same $100,000 budget that we're working off of. It's just how we squeeze the balloon.
Yeah, and I know mine, I paid for mine dental for a year and none of my dentists would take it, so. it
A
was
lot of
just a waste
dentists are
money.
now giving discounts if you're paying in cash,
Yeah.
because they know that that's a problem with the insurance and
Yeah, so I'm
not
just
really
saying it'd
being
be worth
beneficial.
checking and making sure.
So as far as my view, I want an A grade plan for our employees. I want ours to be better than any near cities. We got to beat Elk Ridge. We need to beat Salem. We need to beat Payson. That's just my own opinion. I don't think anyone has as good of employees as we do. And
So-
we ought to, that's how I would vote. I think we need to have an A grade one.
PHP is a very respectable, well-known Utah plan. Obviously, nationally, it's going to be unique, but they're well-known in Utah. They run a good business. They have good networks.
It's pretty good.
I will actually, well, let me come back to the networks. I also want to explain one piece about that. And providing 100% coverage is a great benefit. The deductible versus the HSA funding, that isn't a question of is it a good or bad plan? It's just how the city has designed to fund it and make the expenses for the employee.
We looked
So-
at every single plan. We looked at everything. United, all of it, didn't we? We
Yeah.
got quotes from everybody. Everybody on the committee gathered all the information.
Did you happen to talk to neighboring cities perchance?
We did.
There was multiple
Okay,
other cities
okay.
that
We
were
talked to
on
all of them.
PHP.
Okay.
And in fact, the plan, as it's named here, you can see it's standard LGRP. And my first thought was, oh, large group. No, this is
Looking for
local
communities.
government risk
It's
pool.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
So
Drive
they've
me
taken
crazy.
all of the local municipalities or other government entities and pooled them together in one risk. And that's one really nice thing about this is because our current plan rates each individual employee and their families and their respective ages versus this is just saying, we don't care how many employees you have, how old they are, how many kids they've got on the plan. You're just employee, two-party, or family, and it's just one rate. The other nice thing about this from a city finance planning perspective is every year we're exposed to whatever the market increases are with health insurance. And so this year, Select Health came and proposed a renewal of 12.7%. But in the documents that PHP gave us, they gave us a rate guarantee that next year the renewal will be 7.2%. Now, it's not a multi-year rate guarantee, But at least for next year, you've already got the budget locked in to know we're only going to face a 7.2% increase, even if claims go crazy in the local risk.
And insurance is rough right now. Like everybody's insurance is just high. It's just hard. It's expensive.
So let me come back to one other thing here. As we talked about the network, because you want to have a good plan that has access to plenty of doctors and such. So PHP does offer two different networks. They call them the Advantage and Summit networks. So the Advantage network accesses the Intermountain facilities, and locally, those are the Utah County American Fork, Orem, Spanish Fork, and Utah Valley Hospital. And then Primary Children's is on both networks. So most plans in the state have access to Primary Children's regardless of what plan you're on. So if there's anybody who's got kids that need Primary Children's, they've got access to that. Whereas the Summit network is the Mountain Star network. And so locally, that's Mountain View Hospital in Payson and Timpanogos Hospital in Orem, and then Holy Cross up in Lehigh, and then the University of Utah up in Salt Lake. So these pricing that I'm showing you is for the Summit network. The Summit network is cheaper than the Advantage network. So I've highlighted here on the screen, this is the Advantage network. So for Intermountain facilities, it'd be $2,100 on option 5 versus the Summit network, it's $1,800. So again, going back and forth, 1,800 versus 2,100. So it's about $300 a month cheaper to be on the Summit network. So the proposal is to say, look, employees, you can choose whichever network you want. PHP will allow us, as long as we say we're staying with option 5, either one, but if you want the more expensive network to have access to the Intermountain hospitals, you have to pay the difference between the 2,100. And so on this spreadsheet here, it shows that difference. If I back out, I know the premiums are there.
So you're saying we have our standard here, but the employee could choose which network they would like to be in.
Yeah. And then they would just
Okay.
have to pay the difference. And
Okay.
that difference is $250 a month or $3,000 a year.
And the advantage to that would be if they have some kind of chronic health issue and they've got their set doctors that they don't want to give up.
And it's not usually the doctors, because in most cases, doctors are on all
On
plans,
both of them.
but it's facilities. So
Yeah.
if I have to have surgery, do I want that surgery to be done at Mountain View Hospital or Spanish Fork Hospital? Or given that we've got one employee that doesn't live here, lives down in St. George, and there are no HCA hospitals in St. George, then he would be relying on Intermountain networks to be able to access healthcare there. So he would probably want to get on the Advantage plan as opposed to the Summit plan. But that would cost him extra to be able to do that.
So I have a couple questions. So I do this, well, not exact same plan, but basically the same plan, just a different carrier, and found it to be very beneficial. We do have a lot of medical, and we'll go to the out-of-pocket maximum, family out-of-pocket maximum every year. So I put that much into my HSA. So one, the employees can add to the HSA. Two, the HSA is actually can serve as part of your retirement. It's not just medical. It is a huge benefit to the HSA. It all rolls over, and it's my financial advisor recommends, okay, do you want to put the money in the HSA or do you want to put it in your Roth or whatever? Question I have is you're exactly right. The beginning of the year is always tough, right? Front loading. Is it possible for us to front load the city match of the HSA to help?
I wondered that too.
Theoretically, there is no timing requirements. Even the employee could say, I want to have deducted out of my first paycheck, my entire paycheck, and put it in my HSA because I need to use it right away. And I'm going to realize the tax benefits over the course of the year anyway. So yeah, employees can adjust their HSA amount on a per paycheck basis. I mean, that's that much more work for the payroll department rather than just saying set it for the year and it just is the same amount both for the employer and the employee. But you could do it that way. Now, the one thing is once you put that money in the health savings account, it belongs exclusively to the employee. So walk this through. the employee says, I would like you to fund this all up front. So that $3,000 goes in January 1st. And then on January 15th, the employee says, peace out, I quit. Nice, I just got $3,000 I'm walking away with. And the city has no way to recoup that.
That's okay. I didn't think about that. I'm not used to thinking about quitting. So
It's not an option for you?
Theoretically, that's what could happen.
Okay,
And
so
actually,
that-
a flexible spending is the same thing because the employee has access to flexible spending day one. And the city is funding it through the employee payroll deduction. So let's say for me, if I were an employee of the city and I wanted to put in $3,000 into my flexible spending account, and then I go and get LASIK surgery on January 2nd, get myself reimbursed on January 5th for my LASIK surgery, and I just know that for the rest of the year, I'm going to have $3,000 divided by 26 pay periods taken out of my paycheck. But if I quit, you no longer have my paycheck to take it out of, and so the city's on the hook for that. So it's the same principle, it's just in a different plan, and it's bigger dollars, potentially.
yeah, but I just, and I would recommend that they put in their, whether it's a individual or family out of pocket maximum. That's what I do every year so that I know once that's covered, I don't get bills. I don't.
Well, but as you talked about, it can be an investment vehicle and a
And
retirement
yeah.
vehicle. And so the out-of-pocket maximum for the employee, well, on this plan would actually be 12,000, which is greater than the IRS limit. The IRS limit's 8,350, as I recall. So in this case, the employee may still have some out-of-pocket beyond what they could put in the HSA. If we went with the option number 2, then they would have more money in their HSA or they could have more money in their HSA than they will actually be able to spend that year because they'll hit their out-of-pocket max.
Yeah.
But an employee can just say, I'm going to build up the money. Even though I spend it, I'm not going to reimburse myself this year because I want this money. This is the greatest tax vehicle there is because the money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and it comes out tax-free. The other retirement benefits have maybe 2 steps that are tax-free, but not all 3. So this one's really, really powerful. So if you can manage in your family from a cash flow perspective to save all your receipts, because eventually you want to use it on healthcare expenditures, but as as an employee in our younger years, if I'm saving all of this HSA money, you can build up upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars in this account. And then you look forward to your Medicare years when you're going to have co-insurance with Medicare and you're going to have cancer, heart attack, whatever like that. Now, when those catastrophic things happen in your older years, you've got all this money set aside in a healthcare specific account that you can be able to pull that for. Or you could even say, I've got the receipts for it to prove it, but we want to take our family to Hawaii this year. We've got $50,000 sitting in there. I've got $50,000 worth of healthcare expenses from previous years. I'm just going to get myself reimbursed now from that and use that money that I got reimbursed for legitimate healthcare expenses that's now in our family bank account. And now we can go to Hawaii.
I'm glad you read it.
Yes, they've got to be legitimate healthcare expenditures that you're reimbursing yourself for. But if you delay
Unless
that
you already live there.
Once that reimbursement comes back into the family bank account, then you can use it for whatever you want.
Unlike a flex plan, it's not a use and lose.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a
Okay,
big believer in
so-
it.
Okay, so no losing it at the end of the,
As soon as it goes in
The
that
HSA.
that HSA
Right.
account, it's
Gotcha.
completely 100% the employees,
Okay.
and they can do whatever they want with it, including investing it in the markets.
You can even cash it out. You can, I mean, it actually is a savings account, but if you're in a
There are tax penalties, yeah, that happen with that if you use it for non-qualified expenses, if you just take it out but don't have any receipts to back it up.
But still, I mean, that's better than just burning premiums.
Yeah, or going and getting a payday lender, the tax consequences are better than that option.
Okay, well, so I don't know if the council has more questions, but I would like to make a recommendation as far as what I propose we offer on Woodies, and then you can bat it around, vote on it, vote up or down, but, so I would propose that we utilize option 5 and that we use the
3,000?
the Summit with the Summit, network
Okay.
and increase the, out of, or the city contribution to the HSA to $3,000.
Okay.
I thought the employee chooses which network they go on, but we're,
Well, yeah,
We
But
only
our
pay,
numbers,
we only
for
We'll,
our
pay.
we'll pay
numbers.
for the summit. If
Okay.
they want to upgrade, they can choose.
So the
if
way
we get
that
a hard
works,
number on that, so that, the council can vote on whether or not they'll appropriate that amount.
He just changed, well, he
Yeah.
did,
Yeah, I
he
think-
changed
yeah, I
it
think you have
back.
the- I think you have the dental in there.
no,
No,
I
he
just
just
backed
took
the
it out.
dental out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so there's the number.
Okay, so it is an improvement because I hate deductibles at the beginning of the year. It goes from 8,500 basically to 6.
Yes.
So
but
that's an
it-
improvement.
I mean, there's, the way I understand it is that it's a two-edged
Their
sword.
deductibles
Because now
covered.
there's not co-pays, it's out of pocket, like if you go to the doctor, it's not like a $5 or $10 co-pay and then the rest is covered. You are paying for the entire visit, and that's an out-of-pocket expense. So, I mean, there is
Mm.
that.
and that's
is
what the,
only
H-
select
that's
health.
what the HSA is for though, is to pay for that out-of-pocket
Yeah.
expense. And then reimburse yourself or use it
And then
however.
if there's a major medical, this plan pays where the other plan is going to take more. Once you hit your out-of-pocket maximum for the year, that's it.
Yeah.
And the difference between those out-of-pocket max, if we're going with option 5, it sounds like is what we're recommending.
Correct.
The difference is $12,000 family out-of-pocket max versus the current plan is $17,000. So the employee is saving themselves $5,000 in catastrophic coverage.
And the city commits for a year on our decision, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And
that's
that-
the beauty is that it can be
Next year we
revisited.
can, okay.
So, all right, well, does anybody have any other questions for Aaron or Mike? Yeah. It's nice to meet you. I've never met you. I know your son, but, welcome, and thank you for your help.
I just,
Yes,
and
thank
I
you.
do want to thank the finance committee
That's a
because
lot of work.
Yeah.
everybody reached out and we kind of conquered and divided and we contacted cities. I had another broker that several members spoke to. Jody and Aaron both spoke to another broker to try and get some different quotes. And we reached out some different plans and Tim was the one that got from EHP, right? So everybody spent a lot of time and we met 3 times to talk about it. So,
Well, you can tell a lot of time went into it. It's
and then
great.
Aaron really, because he has the knowledge and he's the nerd about it, he did a really good job of putting it all together for us. But I just want to thank the finance
He is
committee
I like
for
nerds.
all their hard work
Happy to
because
help.
it's much appreciated.
And I also think that this strikes an important balance, because again, like I said early on, I mean, I think it's important that we offer a generous benefits package, because our salaries, people do take a pay cut to come. And so, but I also think it's very easy to be generous when we're spending other people's money, and that's what we don't want to do. Really, we want to strike a balance where there's an economic advantage to the city in attracting and retaining top talent. And I believe that this accomplishes that.
So by putting in the increase of the HSA, we're taking out the dental vision and they can use that if they would like to pay for their own.
No, they're going to look at
I
the dental.
think we'll talk
Okay.
about further.
They're
Okay.
going to look
Potentially
at the
what the
dental and make
dental
sure
looks like.
it's worth paying for.
Yeah.
Some plans are good and some aren't. So I think we've got
My-
time to.
My wife's office my wife would be very helpful in that. She works for a dentist, so she could help with it, looking at plans. I mean, there are plans, they take everything except for a couple of them that
Yeah.
you
I
definitely
actually
don't
have
want.
one that I pay $25 a month for that's like a discount plan. And the dentist actually gets the same amount they would as if it
From
was
the- yep,
submitted
it
to
happens,
insurance. And it cost me $25. And it's not through my employer. And I dropped my company dental because nobody would take it. And I was paying
I have
75 a
great
month
dental.
for that. So there you go.
It doesn't cost me anything.
Oh,
So I'm just saying it's worth checking into. So we can,
And again, I'm not, I'm not sure that open enrollment deadline will apply. I think that we were told that they don't hold me to it, but it is a decision we don't want to make rashly. Mike, were you gonna say something? You look like you, just, if you'll talk into the microphone, so. you can record.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Hold against you.
sorry, this is Mike Taylor, Chairman of the Finance Committee, and you know, as we looked at this, we really wanted to consider the employee as well as the city and make it a win-win for everyone. That's really what
You've
we
done
tried to
that.
Like you did.
accomplish.
Yeah. Good job.
So for the record, the city will end up saving compared to its current spend about 4%, as opposed to what they were going to have an increase of 12%. So compared to the renewal, we're saving the city 15%, 14.6%.
That's amazing.
And then all the employees that I've spoken with, which is all of the ones that get the benefits, I believe they're okay with this option, and actually some of them are really excited about it. So
Well, that's the hope.
I know one employee said that they never go to the doctor, so they're just getting
Yeah.
$3,000 a month in. You know what I mean?
Sound like famous last words.
Right. I feel like you're probably cursing yourself, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But it, you know, it could be a benefit if you don't need it, and then, but then if you do need it, you know, there's some adjusting probably to do.
No, it's finding a balance. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, thank you again.
Do the employees get to say anything or,
Yeah, I'd like to hear from them.
just a few comments? And I don't know if Toby's in the room. Is Ted in the room?
It is.
Okay. So Ted, when you and I talked the other day and we were going over and I'm to save on HIPAA things, I just, one thing to be prepared for is you're going to go from a plan that you're not paying anything for to now a plan. And I appreciate what Brian said, because I do the same thing. I fund it just to be safe. You're going to want to potentially look at now having $350 per paycheck taken out to fund into the HSA. I just want you to be aware of that. Now, once you have it built up and you don't need to use it, then you don't need to keep funding it that much. But just in your family budget, you're going to want to be prepared to put some additional away that you have not been paying for right now. The PHEP plan is a great plan. We've all looked at it. The Summit is the best option. I would not do the dual option because it actually costs $21.47 per month instead of $18.72. So there's a different sheet on there, Aaron, that if you do the dual plan, it costs more. And you can't just choose one or the other. If you do the dual, they charge you a little bit more. But the Summit plan with the HCA hospitals, when I spoke with Toby and Ted, those were both sufficient, and that'll save the city some money. And then the thing talking about saving 100,000 and 50,000 to go, you know, unfortunately, most of us are over age 55. And so that's not a realistic thing that you're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars built up. As a matter of fact, the older you get, you're going to be using your HSA. So you're not going to really potentially have one of the group might have some money saved up, but the others may not. So just some thoughts. The PHP once again is great. Summit's great. Since somebody else brought up a step might be, we're going from a traditional plan of $750 deductible with office copays. Yes, there's a $17,000 out of pocket, but that's for the major medical, but the stuff like x-rays or lab results and that kind of stuff where you could pay a copay now will be 100% out of pocket until we reach those deductibles and those kind of things. Those are the main difference. PHP is great. It's just we got to watch the upper end on the HSA portion. And the HSA, you can only fund 8550, like Aaron said. If you're over 55, you can add another 1,000. So we wouldn't even be able to fund the full 12,000 this year on the HSA. So we would be kind of shorting ourselves there. One recommendation is if you guys do go to option 5 is to look at an HRA, not an FSA. FSA, I wouldn't even give to my worst enemy, but an HRA, the employer still has control over that. It's called a health reimbursement account. And then you can put some money in there while the employees are building up their own HSA. So for example, what I would recommend is if we do go with option 5, that the city funds an HRA in my behalf for that amount. And I don't know if Toby and Ted would like that, but then that gives me time to build up the HSA to try and get to that 12,000 in a year and a half.
Yeah, and I like you and I talked about this, I don't know much about HRA, so that would be something. When do we need to commit to that? Is that as soon as?
Yeah. So HRA and FSA are about the same kind of thing as far as cost wise. It would just be the money be deposited from the city in the HRA instead of the HSA. But Mayor, I don't know if your microphone's out or not, but it's not coming through very good.
Well, if I put it in your program, I'm going to be stuck. So I think I'll swap this out.
Aaron, do you know much about HRA?
Well, here, you get a really good one.
I'm not familiar personally with HRAs. I know.
an investment tool for the employer to help fund medical costs. They are different. They work like an HSA to some degree, but they're totally different. They're not tied.
So administratively though, I mean, is that something you can do, Chris? I mean, I mean, I'm assuming that there has to be some administration of that type
Yeah,
of.
it would be done through the same bank that does the HSA, be done through Health Equity, I believe PEHP uses. And so the Health Equity would set that up and manage it as a third party administrator. I think there's a cost when I was reading on like $5 a month. And then after the first year, depending on how everybody saves, then maybe we just get rid of it next year. But if we're going to go from the Select Health Plan we're on now to the PHP 5, that's what I recommend. If we want to step up and go to the PHP 2 and let the employees build some of it up on our own, then that's another option too. But I'm looking at this here, I'm thinking, man, maybe, I don't know, there's some good savings. If you're going to throw the dental in, I would actually recommend that the employees go to PHP number 2, because in the long run, it's cheaper for the employees to do option number 2 than option number 5 without dental. And I think that's all I had there. Some thoughts.
All right, so with respect to the HRA, is that something that everybody needs to commit to, or is that something that you can do singly? Because I mean, I don't know what Toby or Ted's or, I mean, Jody's even thrown out the possibility of getting on the insurance, which I if it's a good fit, I hope she does. But is that something that everybody would need to opt into, or is it something that can be singly done? Again,
An HRA is something us as a city would contribute to. So it's
Correct.
a little bit different than the HSA. We'd have to look at some of the tax implications that it does have on it, but it is a different mechanism of funding. Are you looking at doing both an HSA and an HRA? Because that's
Yeah, so the
That's prob-
HRA portion, if the city put 3,000 in, then that means the employee could only put in 6,000 of their own money. There's no way you're going to build up your HRA that fast. But the HSA, the HRA does look like it can be limited. Being a city, we're not as concerned about the tax implications, but it is a tax benefit for traditional employers to put that money in there.
well, and I don't have a philosophical problem. I mean, it sounds like it's an affordable option. My biggest, the answers that I would want to get people committing to it though is what are the deadlines that we're facing, and what is the overall cost, which it sounds like is manageable, and then what is the commitment level in terms of participation. Because I while I can appreciate where you're coming from, I also don't want to force somebody into something like that if that's not what they're looking for. But it doesn't seem like it'd be an issue. But there are some unanswered questions. So I think that tonight it would be difficult to commit to that, but it's certainly something that we can explore. And then if we are up against the deadline for that, the same as with the open enrollment, then we will want to make that decision quickly, which we should be able to. I mean, it's something that
But
would
if
be
you're-
within my authority to make that decision.
Yeah, and if you're already adding dental, then you add that too, that's a lot. And where's the savings?
Yeah, no, I'm backing away from the adding dental. I think that the added HSA contribution is sufficient. So
Let me try and restate what Chris said, if I understand what you're saying, Chris. Are you suggesting that instead of the employer funding the HSA to the tune of $3,000, the employer fund an HRA, because it ends up being the same net cost to the city? It doesn't change the budget for the spend this year. The difference is that $3,000 becomes available immediately to the employees, and it remains in control of the city if the employee were to leave.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Except there's one employee that it may not benefit. So that's it. I'm looking online now. It looks like it can be an individual thing, but it has to be done through the city. But for example, if I want the HRA, the 3,000 of my HSA would just go into HRA. And then that allows me and my family to put more into the HSA to meet the deductibles that year. I can look more into that, but that's exactly what I was thinking, Aaron.
okay, no, that's a good option. You certainly want to consider. But I think that as far as what we're voting on tonight, or what I'm asking you on tonight, is just this package, irrespective of the HR. So
that in place of an HSA or in addition to? In place?
In addition in addition to. So it would just be the,
So it wouldn't be an additional $3,000 on top of the $3,000.
I think that's what they're saying.
No.
no, it would not. No.
So
One
in
re-
addition to is you'll have both plans, but the city will only fund the HRA and the employee will fill the HSA.
Yeah, so that way they can add more than up to the 9,500, and then
Yes.
we're not capping them out by
Correct.
our $1,000 contribution. Yeah, no, that makes
Correct.
sense. But again, that's something that we can make administratively. But no, I think that's a good question, Jody. Okay, well,
And we'll just vote per dollar amount. Like, I'll
Yeah.
probably make the motion and I vote.
okay, perfect. All right, does anybody? Well, Chris, thank you for your input on that. Any other employees that care to say anything other than? I told Ted if he wasn't happy to sit there scowling.
Nope, just so no one's sending resumes out.
Yeah, yeah. Don't even
So-
think about that.
Much like the mayor, I have I have an office administrator at my home too that handles all this stuff. So I don't know that I know as much as probably Aaron and Chris about this. And I'm probably not the best example to use because, and I'm the one employee Janet mentioned that probably.
But
I'm
you
gonna knock on
agree-
wood, because I don't go to the hospital or doctor very often. So we don't use a lot of medical expenses. So we never hit our out of pocket in any year. So I'm probably not the best example. And so like I was telling the mayor, I've flip-flopped on these two options kind of during the time, because if you look at option 5, I mean, if you don't go to the doctor very often, you're going to be building up some HSA funding that eventually could be available. Now, granted, I don't have a lot of years left, so it's not a whole lot, but
Fewer since working here.
yeah, fewer since working here. So that option, you build up an HSA faster, and if you're not going to the hospital a lot or doctor visits, then you know that money becomes more available for investments or whatever, which is great. It kind of, what I assume, kind of took the place of some other income I had from my other job. However, the lower deductible in the case that I am getting older and could have some event where I need to hit my out-of-pocket max in the next few years, who knows? Then option 2 is better. So I've flip-flopped on these things, and I really don't have an answer other than whatever the council goes with, I'll make it work.
Okay. Well, and we appreciate that feedback too. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions for Finance Committee, we can move on to our special guest, who is a few minutes early, but welcome all the same.
Good job.
He sent a text and said he's in northern Utah tonight and wanted to
One or the other.
excuse him for tonight.
Okay. Well,
And I
we
told him
appreciate
that-
Sarah McKell being here.
Send him to Mitchell to talk about it.
And
Maybe.
thanks again, Finance Committee. I appreciate what you guys did. So-
Anytime I have to follow Aaron, I'm always nervous.
Oh, so you two are acquainted, huh? Oh,
Oh,
probably
yes.
from Bills and Bagels
We've known
heated
each other
exchange
for
or something?
years and years and years. I was in the Kiwanis Club with Aaron and
Janet.
Janet at the same time.
Same
Oh,
time?
no.
Yeah, because Aaron, I think so. Aaron filled in. He stepped in for Scott Barlow. Maybe you left at the same time. We're going back. We're all getting older.
I
That's
was
the
the
thing.
president of that a couple times. So were you.
Yeah, you did a better job than me
No,
for
no.
sure, by a country mile. But hey, thank you for having me. I'm going to answer questions that you have. But we had a good session. It was a little more contentious than I think normally. We finished at midnight, and I am totally worn out. So this legislative session, I had a new role. I served in our leadership team in the Senate, which meant I got to work on a lot of the contentious issues of the session. Most contentious issue of the session was the union bill. That was the one bill that I didn't have to work on, which was great. I worked on the election bill. Representative Burton and I worked on that bill for about 7 weeks. We worked all session long, and I think we landed that in a really good spot. The other bill that I worked on for a long period of time during the session was the grandma bill. That was supported by the League of Cities and Towns. We are losing millions and millions of dollars every year to grandma requests, vexatious requests. The public is not being well served. Those are taking way too long. So we changed the law. In the end, it wasn't nearly as contentious. At first, it was very contentious. In 2012, the legislature changed the grandma law, And within 2 months, then Governor Herbert called the legislature back into session to repeal the bill because there was so much outcry, and the legislature got hammered. So since the session has ended, you haven't seen a single article in the Tribune or the Deseret News or KSL about the grandma bill. I got the press coalition, the media coalition, to neutral on that bill. Overall, I feel like we had a good session. Our budget was, we balance our budget, we take credit, but there's only one state in the nation that doesn't have a balanced budget amendment, and that's Vermont. So 49 out of 50 states do balance their budgets every single year. We do a better job. There's less than 10 states with a AAA credit rating. We're one of them, and we take that very, very serious. As far as local impact, we did, and I'm going to give Doug Welton credit, give credit where credit is due. The Benjamin exit, we did get the environmental money to do the study. That is an interchange that I think most of you here end up on, and that interchange needs to be expanded and needs to be improved. So I think that was a big win. We got a little bit of help on Highway 6 at the mouth of the canyon. We're still in process on trying to do the Provost sub consolidation on the railroad and realign the railroad off Highway 6. I think that has some impact. But I felt really good about what we did this session. It was a very different experience for me, being in the room, so to speak, and seeing some of the things that were happening. You have a lot of seniors in Woodland Hills. We're grateful for them. The exemption now for Social Security is up to $90,000. We didn't eliminate that entirely. Your income tax state rate, we have a flat rate that dropped to 4.5%. So we had 2 tax credits. Well, we had a third because we dealt with some child tax credit. But overall, good session. Lots of hard work. Your teachers all got a $1,423 ongoing bonus, a one-time bonus of $1,000 to teachers and support staff. WPU, the weighted pupil unit, went up 4%. So I feel like we had a lot of really good things going on. I can't fix what's happening in DC. We have a good federal delegation, but stock market's not looking very good right now, and there's not much. I hope so. But
Talk a little bit about 300 just because that does affect our.
yeah, so 300 was an interesting bill, and it was a pleasure working with Representative Burton. We called it the Speaker's bill. It was a priority for the Speaker, and in the end, the bill was very different, and we landed on the 5th substitute. So the first bill that most of your older voters would have been concerned with, it was eliminating vote by mail. And in the end, you're going to need to opt in to vote by mail, but it's so easy that if you don't get it right, it's probably you. The truth is,
shouldn't vote. Is that what you're saying?
No, you should vote. Everybody should vote, but you have 4 years to opt in, and we made it so easy that if you don't do it, it is a little bit on you, because you can opt in when you vote. There's going to be a box on the ballot. You can opt in when you renew your driver's license. You can opt in when you renew your voter registration. You can opt in when you go online and renew your voter registration. We looked at some interesting data. 26% of voters actually updated their voter file in 2024. 12% updated their voter file by not voting at all. After 4 years of not voting, you become an inactive voter. So 25% updated their file. 26% updated their voter file. 12% updated their voter file by not voting at all. And we learned in 2024, your 38% of voters did that naturally, that natural attrition. So what I think will happen is by January 1st, 2029, after the presidential election, you will need to opt in. And it's going to be so easy that all of you are going to do it. And some of you renew your driver's license every 8 years. Some of you, half of you, will have renewed your driver's license, and you will have opted in to receive a vote by mail. A lot of people move, and when they update their address and update their voter file, like the 26% that happened in 2024, that will happen. And we included some money for the clerks to do some outreach to make sure that people knew. We had two competing ideologies. First and foremost, there is broad support for our election system in Utah. There is broad support, and people think our system works really well. There are folks that don't, but the vast majority confirmed by polling, almost 80% have broad confidence in our elections. And the polling I'd point to is the Sutherland Institute and the Hinckley report. And Utah does a really good job. The lieutenant governor, our own Deidre Henderson, does a really good job. There is also broad support for vote by mail. That number is about 80%. And I did a lot of polling during the legislative session to show people that the numbers that the Hinckley Institute had and the Sutherland Institute was similar to what we were seeing here. And I received more than 1,000 responses. And that's a pretty good sample size, not scientific, but pretty close. But we also learned that voters do want to see some enhancement to security, and those were the two competing. They started out as competing interests, but what I thought and what Representative Burton thought is that you could have both, and that's what we tried to provide. So by 2029, as this moves forward, and you're going to see it in the future, you're going to put the last 4 digits of your state ID number, your driver's license, or your social security number on the ballot. Opting in a senior center, all of the same exemptions that apply to make sure that folks, your older folks can still vote, all of those will still apply. Almost all of your exceptions in the tribal areas, the Navajo Nation, will still apply. Tribal ID card will be a primary form of ID. But I think we landed in a good place. So House Bill 300 in the end was a very different bill. It changed, but the bill became a bill where we recognize the importance of adding some security, but still making it very, very easy to vote. The principle the Senate had was clear the whole time. We want voting to be as easy as possible without cheating, and I feel like we landed that. There's still a little bit of work. In the end, the clerks were neutral on the bill, with a commitment for me that I continue to work with them in the interim. There's a few things we need to clean up, but we're going to get it. It'll be
So you're replacing signatures with the numbers. by
signatures the
2029.
number. You're still going to sign the ballot.
Oh, you're still signing it.
And you're still your signature is still going to be verified up until 2029, and then it'll be the number. But you're still going to sign it, because lucky for you, by signing it, you're going to be able to receive a notification opt-in. We want you to be able to track your ballot. We want you to have the confidence that it was received. We want you to get text messages and emails so you know where your ballot is and that it's been counted. So you're still going to sign it, because under federal law, to receive text messages and not necessarily emails, more text messages, you still need to sign it. Your ballot is an affidavit, and that's why we'll still sign it. But the way we will tabulate your ballot after 2029 is we will use that number to tabulate, to verify. And the other principle that people want is they want election results faster. And I think it'll make it faster. I think it'll make it faster, more secure, and I think it'll still be very, very easy. Again, I know you have lots of seniors up here. I think it'll be very easy for them to opt in. If you don't opt in, it's probably because of something you did, or you're simply not following what's happening. And we're going to make sure we provide greater public awareness, but it'll be easy. So yeah, good question.
Well,
that's the report.
Yeah,
You're
no,
welcome.
I think that that's really.
And I can provide an answer to any question you ask.
Even a national question?
I can provide an answer.
What is
Is
this?
BOI on or off?
That doesn't mean it's going to be right.
Can you get rid of SWIP? Because it's
Um,
costing us a fortune.
Well, the answer is I don't know. So there you go.
BOI, is it a yes or a no? Did we have to do the registration for the LLC, people that have their LLCs? That's a national.
No.
National.
It was
I don't-
on and off, on and off,
It's
on and
off
off.
right now.
It's off again?
Uh-huh. Yeah, indefinitely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's off.
I did it. I was obedient. So mad.
Good for you.
Can we
No.
ask about the requirement that we have to have a building official with 6
Peterson's. Tom
years
Peterson's still.
of engineering architecture
58,
experience,
House Bill 58.
plus they have to then have all the
We're throwing it all.
Maybe Jeff's coming late to answer that question.
Ted's
Yeah.
gonna let him in.
Sounds like I don't know the answers. So if I'm hearing it's House Bill 58,
Yep.
now you got me totally curious.
Well, the only thing is, a building official is totally different than a building inspector. If you have an inspector and they're licensed and they've gone through getting all their inspections, the official mainly just takes care of ensuring that all the paperwork is there. They may also be, at times,
Right.
the one that a dispute goes to, but you can also appoint a board to hear a dispute that has qualified individuals to sit on that board.
The Yeah, the
small
truth on,
city like us,
yeah.
it's going to cost us money.
Yeah, and I'm just reading that you'll be allowed to hire a contractor. The truth is, I didn't hear much about this bill during the session. Typically, if it's a contentious issue, this was a contentious issue a few years ago. I know Evan Vickers got wrapped up in this bill, Senator Vickers and others, but this was not an issue where I heard much about it from the league.
I think we
And
worked hard on this one.
and when I look at the voting on it, it was unanimous in the House and unanimous in the Senate, which tells me that it was, in the end, it would have been a consensus bill with the league. So if there were still lingering concerns, they definitely did not make their way to the top to me. So that's a good question.
Well, dang.
So daylight
Yeah.
savings, we're on it right now. It's amazing. It's more light than that. So here's
We're not. You didn't notice our clock.
So here's what happened. So the House really liked standard time. They passed a bill. The Senate really wanted daylight savings time. At least the committee did. And the committee killed the standard time, and I never voted on that bill. It never made it the full body of the Senate. I know that there is broad support to see a change. I've pulled this many times. The majority of people want daylight savings time rather than standard time, but the vast majority want it to be one or the other. So I'm told the feds are going to work on it. So legally, so the way this works is legally we can change to standard time, but we cannot change to daylight savings time. That takes federal action. I don't know all of the ins and outs of the law, but that is federal law. We can go standard time and mirror Arizona, but we can't go daylight savings without changes federally. And I'm told you're seeing them talk about it right now, and we may see it happen. But the majority of people I talk to want to see us on more light at night. But the bill to go to standard time was something that legally we could have done, but that didn't make it through the Senate committee, and it got pretty. It was pretty close in this.
It was the number one bill being tracked at KSL.
My dad
Probably.
called
Is
it
that
real
bill?
time.
Was that
Probably.
bill?
That's what I call it.
And there are different people depending on where you live, because northern Utah one was different than southern Utah on the
It's
on
true.
the thoughts, because in the wintertime, if you go to this time that we love right now, but you would be dark, clear till noon.
Well, and you can attach in southern Utah to Arizona really easy, and we would have been outliers with Wyoming and Idaho, and that's part of it as well. Because down in the Strip, we would have been the same time as Nevada most of the year and Arizona all year. So,
Yeah. It was interesting that was the number one tracked bill.
So Mike, would you tell us your biggest disappointment, if any?
Parimutuel.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I wanted to see parimutuel, but I don't know that I had any. I don't know that I had any, and I'll say it on the record. I think there's no reason why we shouldn't have parimutuel allowed here. I think it's, to me, the idea that people are going to become habitual gamblers because we have a race season from May to maybe August, maybe September. I don't think that's reality. We have a lot of equines, especially in South Utah County, and I think helping them. I have a conflict of interest. Obviously, I have horses and
He's
I race.
got two babies.
I have two babies, and you're welcome to come see them.
I want him to see
Wait
them.
a few months because I have 5 more coming, and it'll be a lot more fun when there's 7 instead of 2.
So cool.
The first 2 are they're pretty awesome, but the
People
next,
don't realize that we already have a horse racing in Utah.
yeah, we do for sure.
If you
So,
can't.
and back to your question, I don't know that I have big disappointments. I think the legislature struggles messaging. In the end, I know there was a lot of contention on the union bill. I think the policy is right. I think public collective bargaining is bad. I think it's bad for the taxpayer, and I can stand by that policy. I don't think the messaging was good, but I've been up there long enough to learn from some of the things, the more difficult issues. I didn't like the way that rolled out. I think we could have handled it better. I think the policy was ultimately right in the end. One of the other disappointments I'll say, I mean, in the end of the session, we got into this weird spat with the auditor, and I'll say on the record, she made some comments that were very inappropriate, and she grossly misrepresented the issue. I was in the room. There was never a threat to kick her out of the Capitol. She said that. It was wrong. Then she doubled down and said we were trying to kick her out of the Capitol so we could close her transparency office. That comment was utter nonsense. And, I think in the heat of the moment, sometimes we say things we shouldn't. And I saw that with her, and I was really disappointed. It's going to take a while for me to want to work with her in earnest, because she made some really statements that in my mind were just gross and they were very, very inaccurate. So that wasn't necessarily coming from us, but you get in the heat of the moment near the end of the session and weird things start to happen. And that was one where, I'm hearing her comments and I was in the room. She said she was blindsided. I was in the room because we were talking about moving some of her staff, not necessarily her from the Capitol. And we told her the bill number, who was running the bill. And then when the bill came forward, she said she was blindsided. And it's like, well, you weren't blindsided because I was there. And the president of the Senate was very clear on what we were trying to do and why. And then she doubled down and made more misstatements. And it was weird. It was a weird moment, and it was very inappropriate. And maybe that's the low of the session.
I've gotten a few, and I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but a few people in town who were concerned with the appropriations. It probably came through Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
For the domestic violence, the decrease in domestic violence help, or that was like 1 point something million a year, and it's now down to
it shaved like 200,000
a year for the 13 entities, plus maybe shutting down the college rape crisis centers on university campuses. And so there were several people in town who contacted me about that one. You know much about
I don't know the full backstory, but we reallocate funds all the time, and we're usually really careful when we do it. I know I had some concerns with that office in the past. I think most of them have been resolved, but I think we're a lot more aggressive prosecuting in that realm. Steve White had a really good bill that I worked on in the Senate, and I didn't know if we'd get it across the finish line, but with your repeats, sex offenders, and those repeats, those sex abuse cases, we stepped up the penalty, and we didn't do it for first-degree felonies, but we did it for Class A misdemeanors, Class B, Class C. I mean, Class 2, first degree we didn't, second and third degree we did, and Class A misdemeanors. But I think we were pretty aggressive when there was a problem with sex abuse, domestic violence, but we really Derek Brown came in and really is kind of changing the temperature on that issue and wants to have some tools that other states have, and we really provided a lot of those tools. A year ago, last session before, we kind of changed the makeup of the Sentencing Commission to make sure there was an imbalance that kind of favored not prosecuting. And you can go back, and I'll give you the example. David Levitt ran for office. With the delegates, he got 10%. Then he got signatures, went on the ballot, and I think he got 20%. He got throttled, and part of that was a lot of the police chiefs across the county were worried that this prosecutor is not taking sex abuse and these sex crimes serious. And I don't know on that 200,000 that decrease, but I will tell you this: as far as finding ways to make sure we're prosecuting those really heinous crimes, I think we went too far in not prosecuting, and we're trying to restore that balance to something that was more appropriate. And we looked at all of our neighbors. We looked at what Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, and California were doing, and they were all stepping up on those repeat offenses, and we weren't. That doesn't mean a judge couldn't, but we were stepping up 105 days, and other states were stepping up 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and that was a priority for the new Attorney General.
So just to clarify, so I can call these residents
Yeah.
back, we reallocated, so you're saying that maybe money was reallocated more for the sentencing part?
Yeah,
because it was
I guess my
favored
answer
on
is
the
I'm
front
not
end
entirely
of
sure. I didn't follow.
services provided.
That would have come through a committee cut that I wasn't part of.
Okay.
So that's
I'll just check
probably
on
a Kevin Stratton. It probably went through his
that. Yeah.
appropriation
I told
committee.
him I'd give him a call and ask.
That is a huge budget though, and it's hard to keep track of everything. But we reallocate. I've got weird questions like, why don't we do Doge? And we should never do Doge. We should never have federal officials coming into our state budgets. That would be inappropriate, and federalism, I would never support that. But we have our own version every year, and we did a big reallocation with higher education, and we reallocated funds and cut funds across the board, and we do it every session, and that's why we're one of less than 10 states that have a AAA credit rating, because we take it really serious, and we've never got into that federal out of control spending. We do our own version, and we're much more, truthfully, we're much more surgical than what you're seeing in DC right now.
I've noticed a lot more protesting, at least in my view, since January. Do you see it up there, and how does that affect you?
Kind of, but I mean, not really.
Okay.
I
He
think
doesn't
it's
go
to me.
outside.
To me, I don't get outside much from the Capitol, to be honest with you.
I don't dare.
But I think the protesting
every day.
during
I would say so.
COVID was much more aggressive. And I still remember when downtown we had a police car that was tipped over, spray painted, burned, lit on fire, and then we had people spray painting all over the Capitol. And I remember a row of highway patrolmen that were standing there defending the Capitol, and we had this I don't know, this Antifa type protest, and then we had like a MAGA rally with guns 2 days later. It didn't feel worse to me. I've seen some really big protests years ago. I met Sherilyn Woodhouse for the first time, and the teachers were requesting a 6.25 or 6.2 something request in the WPU, and the entire rotunda was full. The third floor was full, and the fourth floor. I remember a rally where a group of women came up from State Street that they just absolutely filled the Capitol. The protest on the union issue was pretty big, but I've seen bigger. Like in the past, I've seen bigger. But there were a lot of protests. I mean, there's always the concern people don't feel like the legislature is listening, and we do listen. We read our emails, but sometimes we disagree on the policy, and sometimes we align with the majority of folks that we represent, and sometimes that's not popular with different groups, and they come up and protest, and that's okay. I actually like a good protest. I think it's healthy to our republic. I think it's great having people on Capitol Hill. Just so you know, this is a trivia question. I always bring the kids up and we talk about protesting, and you are welcome at the Capitol 365 days out of the year. It does not close on Christmas, and it is always open to the public. So I love a good protest, and I walked through at the wrong time during the union rally, and a highway patrolman had to step in between me and some random dude who just took it upon himself to come scream at me, and it's okay. I mean, I don't take offense. I voted for the union bill, and he was very upset with my vote, and that's okay. But it's part of the process.
Well, I just tell you, you're TV ready and camera ready.
I don't know about that.
I've seen, yeah, it's happening.
We do a lot. I mean, I tell you, it's different in the Senate. We do media availability every day, and we've got 6-8 cameras just drilling us with questions every single day, and it's okay. We have some fun with it, but this is not a face for TV. You know, anytime it's in a committee hearing, I shouldn't say this is funny,
You
but
need to slouch.
the committee hearing cameras always shoot from the top down, and you see it on the screen, and he's just like, am I really losing that much hair? And the answer is yes, because you can see it. I mean, I wish
Senator, you're doing fine.
I wish the camera would shoot from
You
Anyways.
have lots of hair.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to say, thank you for working with the league so much. You know, we tracked, close to 300 bills that affected municipal government.
Yeah.
And although in the end, you had what, 587 or something that passed.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you working with our staff and with all of us who are local officials who are there. Makes a big difference when, as we go in and the substitutes and getting those things ironed out before
Right.
it gets heated on floor. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. There were a lot of issues, lots of issues involving local government, lots of issues with immigration, lots of election issues, but we sorted out a lot of bills, and a lot of bills didn't make it through committees this year. It was an interesting year. The House came out pretty aggressive on some issues, and it's like, let's slow down. Let's think some of these issues through. Let's make sure the policy's right. And I think there was a lot of response to what was happening nationally. And I guess the one thing I'd leave with you is that there is a lot of animosity nationally, and some of that, certainly to your question on protest, it spilled over a little bit. There's no doubt. But for the most part, I think what you saw, I got called by Jessica Miller, Tribune today. She wanted to know about a bill that Angela Romero, minority leader in the House, didn't get passed, dealing with polygraphs, and I was going to be her Senate sponsor. I agree with her on the policy. I think forcing a victim to take a polygraph is just bad policy. I don't think we should do it. And the science isn't good. But Angela Romero was trying to turn it into an issue where I'm a Democrat, I couldn't get a bill passed, but Jen Plum in the Senate and Stephanie Pitcher in the Senate, both Democrats. I think Jen Plum passed 12 or 13 bills, and Stephanie passed 13 or 14 bills. And while we have disagreements, we work well with the minority party, and when they come to the table in earnest and they work with the majority party, they both passed more bills than I did. during the session, and I think the system works. But thank you for having me. I'm going to
coming.
don't call
we
me in 2
appreciate your
weeks. I'm
comments.
leaving. I'm leaving on Tuesday on a long overdue vacation. So watch
Gonna
for the
run a
photos.
race.
I'm
And
gonna run a race.
is it a marathon?
I'm gonna run a marathon
Which
in
one?
Antarctica. So
Wow.
One quick thing, you're
Yes.
on the committee for the Olympics.
yes,
And every
I'm on the
city-
steering committee now.
No, I love that. So every city is going to have a participation part.
Yeah.
What should we start looking at in the next 10
Okay.
years to get ready?
So over the next year, that's a great question. Over the next year, we're going to do what do we call it? Project 2029, and that represents the 29 counties. So the Olympic team is out on a listening tour, and they want input across the state. And there's going to be certain things that I want to see happen. I want to see us. I think we crushed snow and ice, and that's great. I want to see the state highlight Red Rock in some way. I think the Olympics are going to be unique, and I think air taxi will be part of it. And for me, if we don't find a way to do an event in the Red Rock or a ceremony, a medal ceremony, I mean, maybe this is we air taxi from Salt Lake to Tuacahn and have a medal ceremony with the Red Rock. I think we're going to miss it. But we really do want to see all parts of Utah engaged. We want to see kids across the state engaged. The best news wasn't that we got the Olympics back. It's that we got the Olympics back in 2034 instead of 2030, because now we have a 9-year, I used to say 10-year, we have a 9-year runway to get this right. And I'm really fortunate and honored to be on the steering committee. I've been part of our legislative coordinating committee, and now being on the steering committee is going to be lots of fun. I'm trying to think how on earth. So we have host cities across the state. They're going to be kind of these anchor cities. Provo is going to be one, right? But I've got to figure out how we bring some events a little further south. So I'm going to be working on it.
Can I carry the torch?
Probably.
Just for a brief,
Probably.
Okay.
Last time we
I mean,
had
that's
two
all I
residents.
ask.
I can tell you this.
In 20 in
They're not going to trust
You're going to
me.
have to still be the mayor, though.
Hey, I will
it's
tell you
worth
this:
it.
they're not going to trust me with a torch. Let me say one of the cool bills we did, and it was personal to me. Casey Snyder did cancer screening for our firemen, and when I had a fire down on the McKell farm, I can still remember you guys showed up. So Woodland Hills came, Salem came, Utah County came, Spanish Fork came, and Mapleton. And I still remember the Woodland Hills fire truck was, I don't know if you still have it. It was the coolest fire truck that arrived. But
got a
I
newer
will
one
not be
now.
carrying a torch. And nobody's going to trust me with a torch.
We had two residents from Woodland Hills who carried it in the O2.
That's fixed. We'll find a way to do something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, well, that's great. That's a great update. And, we appreciate, I hope you get some rest and watch out for the polar bears. Wait,
There's no polar bears.
Antarctica or?
Antarctica.
Okay.
How long till you get back? I
Yeah.
still want to come see those.
So
babies.
April 2nd. So here's the deal. I have 2 babies right now. I have one that was due yesterday, not born yet, but I have another. I've got 1 due in May and 4 more in April. So the best ones, we're saving the best for last, second to last, I should say. I know I know what's coming. And around the end of April, probably the best horse I've ever bred is going to be born, and it's going to be amazing. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
it's going to be amazing.
Well, thank you, Senator.
thank
We
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Jeff, sorry he wasn't here. I know he's busy, so thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
It's a treat that he comes.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, item 4.
We need to go to.
Number 2, and I know
Oh,
Jeremy
oh,
Cyril's
yeah,
really
we
anxious
sure
to get
did.
that signed.
Okay, no, thanks for grabbing or catching that. Ted?
Ted needs his 10 turns.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Yeah.
as well.
Janet says yes, whatever you want.
Yeah. Now, this is just the grant that we got from Utah County for the trail study for $100,000. We've signed the grant. Of that, our city is responsible for $6,770 out of that total $100,000. We've signed the grant with Utah County, so they've now made the money available. We went through the process of selecting a consulting group to do the trail study for us, WCG, who is one of the approved consultants to use from the pool. And they have given us a contract for essentially $100,000, the amount of our grant, to do the study for us. And so this is just an approval of the contract with WCG to do the study.
Okay. Any
WCT.
questions? Have we got that money set aside already or?
As we get billed from the consultant, we then submit that to the county and they reimburse us.
All right.
Any questions?
Wow, that was
Yep.
easy. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Don't go far.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
ordinance 2025-10, updates to Title 11 subdivision ordinance.
I looked at it, but it was 57
It was-
pages. So
I
will you
know.
tell us what you changed?
I know, I was like, oh, this is,
I'm looking for the red or blue or
I
yellow.
did the same thing. I'm like, going, okay, where's the red?
Should go to planning commission.
Passed, but there's been a few to it. Whether you realize it or not, you approved the tweaks, but didn't know what they were going to be. But we've talked to our attorney. He's suggested that just kind of close the loop on all of that. And so there were a couple of diagrams that were added to the chapter and a couple of other. That's
And
all.
they weren't in red, so
No.
we had to just read through and say, I wonder if this is new.
We put.
Can you send us one that has the red lines?
I wish I could. I didn't get one from
It'd be nice
the
to see
contractor, but
language.
the main change is that diagram on page 9, I believe it was. And the last one, it just wasn't, it didn't come up very well and there was some confusion in it. So this one is just a little bit clearer for everyone. It outlines what the subdivision process is and which step in kind of what order things go. And
Is that
so it's
page
just
20?
Yeah, because there's no
okay.
diagram on
Go to
9.
page 20. Is it a box with about 4 different circles in and
Yeah, that's on
Yeah,
20.
arrows and twirlies.
yeah, and
Yeah,
that
with the
one was
whole-
not in the
whole
prior
chapter.
one that we were sent. Lisa Baskins at
Yeah.
Smith and Harvickson.
Mhm.
She really went through this with a fine tooth comb, and this was one of
She's
the things
amazing.
that
And
she
she's
said
on the city council too in North Salt Lake.
She
So
is.
she really thinks a lot about municipal
the process.
Yeah.
process.
So that's just asking you to sign off on that. It's the final document that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Hey,
for the clarification.
Thanks, Wayne.
Mhm.
I didn't want to have to read all 57.
I did like
And it's
like
good-
Doral did. I was just like going,
And it
okay,
was-
which parts are
It's
new?
really great reading too.
Yeah.
Sure it's
Subdivision.
important.
But I do
started
like
and
that
I was like,
diagram.
I can't do it.
Actually, Wayne, what percentage of this will be shifted or changed at all, or any, per our last meeting's decision to send out our subdivision and contracting, just to get all that code separated properly from residential build to
Well, this
subdivision
wouldn't
build?
this wouldn't impact. This is subdivision. This takes into consideration the bill that was passed by the state legislation last year.
Yeah,
To
I think
make
you're thinking of the
us
development
qualify.
So I'm thinking of the
standards.
development
So
standards, okay.
the standards, the development and construction standards are more what the city sets. However, the only thing
Gotcha.
that will change in there is the process. We'll have to follow the process that now the state
Perfect.
says in our approval.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. Ted, the FEMA project.
Yeah, well, Jason, they are, FEMA gone is no longer a project, so.
Right. Yeah. That was quick.
So, yeah, how's that for an update?
Oh my gosh.
So we're still working on the project. We essentially, because we found out the road is not lined in our right of way, some of the culverts that are existing that we're going to have to replace are actually not completely in our road right of way. We don't know how by how far. It's a change in scope to go back and do the survey, come up with some easement documents. Before we can do that process, because it is a change in scope, we have scope. So I'm working on that right now, which is the cost. So bit behind right now. We have talked with FEMA and we are getting a extension request submitted to FEMA to extend the project another year, which they don't see that there's going to be any issues getting that done. And then if we have to, we've got one more year extension request after that too. So that's kind of where we're at, just working on a little addendum, and then we're extend the project and then work through some of these right-of-way issues.
Great. Anybody have any questions on that? Hey, thanks, Ted. Ready, set, go.
Nothing to report on that one right now. It's just a grant we try and apply for each year, but which we got last year. Haven't applied for it yet this year.
Okay.
Just a side note, I did talk to my husband about our driveway, and he's fine.
And that's on the
Sweet.
record.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It is now recorded.
Free of charge too, right? And you're committing
You
to
just have
all
to
of it?
fix it. You have to put it back. That's all.
Ish.
Now it's getting, yeah. Now it's getting
Yeah,
complicated.
and I heard it's kind of ish, so it's got to be. It's got to fix
Well,
it.
thank you. Thanks for your community spirit and your willingness to.
Thank your husband.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, fine, whatever.
I mean, I've got a mitigation floodplain in my backyard, so we all have to pay our dues, right? Okay, the 2024 Utah County Recreation Grant. Is that you, Jody?
Yeah, this is me. So I contacted Alice Black. She's with the Utah County Commissioner's Office. I'm assuming she must be on vacation because I've tried calling and emailing her and haven't had any luck getting in touch with her. This was the grant that would give the city $4,000 to get reimbursed for expenses with the park. I've got a receipt for $5,920.45 that I want them to reimburse us, 4,000 of it. So I'll still keep working with her and see if I can get that this year before the fiscal year's up.
Who did you say you're working with, Alice?
Alice Black.
Okay.
Why do you have some strings you can pull?
I don't know.
All right. 2025 Utah Outdoor Grant.
That's the one that Sherry Berger was applying for, right?
Yes.
I have a little update. She did get it submitted.
Okay, and she needed a letter. Did we get that put together? Is that something for me to sign here, maybe
Tomorrow?
tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, no, perfect. There was one, they needed a little bit
Yeah.
more specificity on one thing.
Yeah, so she told me she felt really good about it. She felt like we had a really good shot at it.
Excellent.
So I reached out to her for some information that Ted needed. And then Lori contacted me as well. I'm guessing she's out of the country or something because she's.
She is.
She is.
Well, Hawaii's still part of the country, isn't
Not
she?
tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's coming.
But you are kind of overseeing the grant application, right?
No, this was all done independent of me. She told me she was just about finished with it and sent it in.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Well, and I think that because I think that rightly so, Wayne brought up, that we just want to make sure that we are keeping our finger on the pulse of
Yes.
these things. So thank you for doing that.
I-
And
I wish I had gotten more information.
No,
There's
I
more
mean,
information we should be having.
it was an organic sort of a thing, and it's a learning process. But I just, the hope is that there won't be any surprises.
Yeah.
But I think
Isn't
that
it
in our
everything that
letter,
we
we're
already
going to
talked
be
about,
very
though, right?
specific.
It was
Yeah.
everything that we had
It's-
already talked about.
It's supposed to be, but I think that's what the mayor's saying is we need to make
Yeah.
sure that it's everything that we talked about because it's not the city didn't actually fill it.
No, and anything you can do.
Yeah,
in
as
that
soon as I
direction would be great.
hear back, I'd actually like to get a copy. We might make sure that we're keeping those things.
Yeah, well, and it might even be something that we could, if there are any sort of areas that need further clarification, we can address those in our letter too. So, okay, all right, thank you. Yeah,
That's why Lori called you. She's our recipient of all the grant information for the city and any reports that are written and things like that. So just what you do get, then just pass it on to Lori.
Yeah, and she was reaching out to Sherry as well, but I think I'm going to try to do that for Lori and make sure that she, everything's funneling through her in the future.
thank you. Okay, large purchase requests.
Nope.
That's your answer, or you don't have any to?
I'm pretty sure
That's
nobody,
my
nobody
answer.
here is wanting any large purchase requests.
Well, if Janet doesn't have any, maybe
Yeah, well, perfect. Right. Well, you heard about air taxi. That's what we really need is an air
I
taxi
got
up
to
here.
do the virtual air taxi at Capitol. It's pretty
Oh, you
cool.
did?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
Virtual.
straight
They
out
did
of.
it- they did it- They showcased at Duncan Air the other day here in Utah County, and it's gonna be pretty cool. My
Yeah,
sister builds those, so she had already been telling me about them.
really.
She's in
Yeah.
aerospace industry.
No, that's something. All right. Let's see. Update on the sale of surplus equipment. Do we have anything, Brian? Ted?
I still have more to post. I did have some questions in our, there's some verbiage in our ordinance about that things could be sold, not necessarily sold through auction. And there are some things that we could possibly sell. We've got some possible buyers. That's kind of why I held off a little bit.
Like KSL or something like
No, no,
that,
no.
where it's just selling rather
Sell-
than auction.
We have people who are interested in some things
Oh.
that we could sell. And I do want to get some clarification on, can we sell without using the auction? Because we already have buyers lined up. Based on our ordinance, it just doesn't, I thought it said that we had to put it through the auction, but it doesn't necessarily.
So it
Correct.
basically gives three options in our code. I was reading it the other day. Now you're going to ask me to remember it, but you can do it through the auction. You can do it through another municipality for fair and equal trade. You go to another municipality, or I think the last was just sell.
Yes.
You can sell it. And if I remember right, those are the three ways we can get rid of surplus property. Now, if it's over a certain dollar amount, it has to go to the council, get approved to get rid of it. And I don't remember exactly, Jody's looking up. I don't remember exactly what the code was I read, but there was a few options in addition to the auction.
On the third one, sell independently or individually, whatever you said there. Would that just be then fair market value you'd put it at, or how would you know that you're selling it at
and that
the
would be,
price?
that's kind of where the question comes up, and I don't want to be involved in it at that point. I'm happy to do it for the auction, but as a council person, I don't think I should be involved if we go to a fair market sale. I'm happy to do the administrative part of it if there's anything that I can do, but I don't think I should be setting prices or anything that's not in the legislative.
So just for,
That's more the mayor.
just for clarification, what it says is once it's been declared as surplus property, then it can be through ownership transfer to another city, county, or state agency on terms mutually satisfactory to each entity, or through an auction, trade-in, or sell or other lawful means. If the salvage value asset is over $20,000, the city council has to approve the disposal or release.
And what we're talking about at this point is actually pretty low value. I just don't think that it's appropriate for me to be involved at all in fair market value sale. Auction is just fine because I'm just posting it, right?
Right.
But I just don't think that I should be involved in a fair market sale.
Do you find that the auction is effective? I mean, is there any reason we'd want to take it out of the auction? I mean, are we finding that that's a
Small
reasonably
things,
successful
probably.
So
avenue to?
it is very successful on a lot of things. I mean, we sold some chains for, a stack of chains that we didn't need anymore for less money than one of those chains was worth because nobody bid on it, right? Somebody wanted one of those chains and he came and got the whole lot. We've got some binders out there that are actually, there's a couple people interested, or at least I've heard there's a couple people interested in a box of brand new binders that we have, chain binders that we won't use at all. And those could quickly go if we put a fair market value on them and sold them. And what happens is the auction, we get a dollar amount, they bid it and get a dollar amount, but they charge the buyer more money, the auction fee. So it doesn't come out of our dollars, it comes out of the buyers on top of what they bid for it. So we would end up getting, we could get more money if it was done properly. That's why I don't want to be involved in it.
So
And
you
I don't
do
want
feel
any-
that if we were to just go outside the auction site, we could probably get more, some of the things that we're selling?
We possibly could, yes. It would, but it would take, it'd take the pricing and everything else and then the legwork. And like I said, happy to do any administrative, but fair market, I'm not comfortable with that as part of the legislature.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see your point, and I don't know where we would come up with a valuation.
I mean, that could go to Ted. I mean, you could.
Perfect.
You could give that to Ted.
Yeah, I support it.
Yeah. So maybe as an example, we just sold our service truck through a lawful means, third party sale. Chris did a blue book on it. We got a blue book value, and then looked at some of the expense that maybe someone would have to put into it to fix it up. With some of the issues, we learned about some of the issues from someone who had previously worked on it, and through that, felt like it was a fair value of what we got for the truck. So it's one surplus anyway, purchase or sell of a large item. Well, it wasn't a large expense, but something we just have sold, that old service truck. So that's kind of what we did with there. I mean, that would be something similar we would do if we didn't go to an auction. We would do come up with whatever kind of a market valuation of it we could, and then just put it out there and see if we could sell it.
Which is easier with vehicles than
Yeah.
chains.
Yeah, it is. Things like the chains and some of the other stuff we saw in the auction, I think that's the appropriate place to do it. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but we can set a minimum on the auction.
Yes, we can.
So if we don't get that minimum, then we can decide not to sell it. But I think in a lot of cases for some of the surplus stuff, the auction's probably the good place to
It's
go
the
to with it.
it's
The
really
easiest,
for us to do.
especially when it's a lot of miscellaneous
Then we'll
stuff.
make 'em come pick it up and I'm out of town.
I know, and then you forgot to tell me, and Toby was gone, and so I was out there trying to haul plates around. But and we didn't, and
So-
almost wrecked the lower, but not quite. But I think things like vehicles and some of those things, we maybe look at some, in addition to the auction, maybe some other means of doing it, where we can come up with a market value and then kind of decide and put it out there.
Yeah,
to
no, that
sell.
makes sense. I mean, then we can
Because
have more
most
data.
vehicles go really low on the auction.
Yeah.
Things like Corbett's old truck, we did really well on that sale. We maybe could have gotten more money privately, but it would have taken a whole lot more work, and nobody has the time to do that.
Yeah.
But something like the service truck, again, there are people that are interested in the chain miners, that we could probably do a sale on it, but I'm not going to make the call. If we want to post them, I'm happy to do that, because then I'm really out of it for the dollar.
Okay, well, in our staff meetings, I think that we could probably, if there are things that come up, that then we can just make the determination if they would be pretty easily valued, and if they're not, then we just send it to auction.
These things are commercially available, so it wouldn't be hard to find out what the commercial price is and make an adjustment for used.
Well, the commercial price, I agree with you. The adjustment is where it would be more difficult, I think. Yeah. But I mean, we could even do some experimental efforts with some things and just try it. And if it's a total bust and takes a ton of human resource time, then it's probably not worth whatever added pennies we'd get from it. But a good point. We certainly want to make the most that we can off of the surplus property. Okay. Thank you. Chris, item 8, the January 2025 financials and check disbursements.
Yeah, let me just go back to the large surplus real quick. So we did sell the truck, the old service truck, but they're going to roll it in, Ted, as a trade-in. I was a little nervous about just selling it to a third party without, knowing for sure what the ordinance was, and the subjectiveness can really point back to whoever decides the price. The auction just is nice because it's just what it is. But so they're going to take that truck in as a trade-in, and then they sell it from there. So if that's, unless the council wants to do something different, it's $5,000 for the service truck and the equipment that's there.
Yeah, and that is one of the means we can use for the procurement or through the sale of surplus equipment allowed by our ordinances for trade-in.
Okay. So the financials were sent out. We've been working on February financials. They were just about ready to go out, and then got a few more statements in. So those are going to be another week or two as we're working through those statements. Sorry, I was just trying to pull up what was just sent out. Did you guys have any questions on the latest financials? There wasn't too much excitement going on there with another quiet month. Ted needs to get spending.
I was surprised in January about the pretty good expenses on attorney fees. Up around $3,000. I had it. I don't know what those issues were, but it's still going. Something's going on still.
Well, actually, the most of the attorney's fees that we are incurring now, and we are trying to kind of pump the brakes on those. It's more for city transactional matters. They're not for disputes, and so which is good because I think that there's value to be found in that as opposed to
They are called
leaving cash.
ongoing, so that makes sense. Okay.
Sometimes there's things they have to review, right? Some of the-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but since we
Just
did
like that.
reallocate some of that money,
Oh, perfect. You know, they,
Okay.
having that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
but we are trying to be more careful with that because we did pull out that 16 grand to apply it to the development standards, and so we want to make
Okay.
sure that we're mindful of that. Thank you.
So there's been several recommendations over the past couple months, maybe past year of different, some people want to see the financials in the Excel spreadsheet. Some want to see it summarized and some want to see the full financials. So that's why you're going to get multiple financials. And then every quarter now, you're going to see the full financials with the balance sheet and the balances of all the liabilities and assets there. But really, we're pretty much in line. We just need to open up the budget again. As soon as we find out exactly, Ted, with what's going on with the roads here in the next couple of months, we'll need to open it up. But for the most part, we're 58.33% of the year passed. We've got 69% of our revenues collected for the general account, 55 spent on, and then the expenses 55 spent on general government, 68% on public safety, which is to be expected because of the fire guys have been out fighting fires. And then roads and public improvement, that is low just because of the winter. And I know Ted's got some things coming up that's going to take $500,000+ of that. And then parks and recreation, 46%. So we're right on target right now to end the year as budgeted with some minor tweaks here and there. But this is what we're audited on. We're audited on these categories, not the individual lines within the categories.
Very helpful. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Department reports, Public Works and Fire.
I keep waiting every single council meeting to see if you just sit in the front row.
Yeah.
You never do.
He
Gotta
likes to
get-
walk up.
I got to get my steps for the day.
Yeah, and there's probably a standing goal, right?
Yes, and
Your
we got a lot of
standing.
stuff to achieve. Um, well, if you remember, I talked about last time that the Maple Canyon well went out. We had a bunch of holes in the casing, and they were reaching out to their consultant and a well repair guy to figure out how to fix it and what it's going to cost. They've come up with a solution, and that's basically put a new casing in the well. It's about the only solution they can come up with, just because there's so many holes. That's the only one that's going to be effective. So they've got a contractor on board to put the new casing in. His cost is going to be $257,000 and $257,790.
That's actually less than I would have expected.
So I think we'd estimate initially, I think when I mentioned this before, I think it was right around $250,000 is what we estimated, and it came in basically right at that. So, and of which 40% is going to be our cost for that well. They've ordered the casing, and they're expecting to have the casing in probably by about mid-April. They should have the work done, is what they're estimating right now. So
that's receiving of materials plus work,
Mhm.
labor done, finished.
about 2 weeks to get the casing in and about 2 weeks to do the work. And that started about a week ago. So.
And we do need that for us to shut off.
Yeah, yeah. And as you know, we're in the middle of upgrade at our well, which the contractor needs to shut down that well to put the new pump in. And he can't do that until we get this one up. So
We're saying this one will be, if it's finished mid-April or kind of more started and be done by the end of April.
finished mid-April. Yeah. So I've notified our contractor of that. And so they're just kind of working that into their schedule. It's a bit of a tight window because then about June is when people kick on their sprinklers, and it about takes both wells to to be able to meet some of those demands. So we're in a bit of a crunch window here, but we'll make it work, or we start cutting off city council water first.
Well, we need to do the drawdown test when we get the new pump in to find out what we're going to be able to supply up here.
Yeah, it's about, yeah, and they're about 2 weeks downtime on our well too, to get that pump
That'll
replaced.
include the drawdown test?
It'll include the, yeah, pump
Okay.
test. I mean, the pump only takes about a day or two to get the pipe out, put the new pump on, take a day, and then to drop it back down a couple days, and then a week of testing and flushing and that kind of stuff.
All right, well, that's, I mean, I'm glad it came in roughly where it was projected, so that's the silver lining. Yeah. Yeah.
And
no,
where
that's
we
good.
haven't used that well too much, you know, that Maple Canyon one, when we turn our Frog Hollow off and have to use just solely that water, they know it, that we're fine with being able to do that.
Oh, with Salem? Yes, they're already working.
Is our booster good to go to handle that load? Maybe. We'll find out. Okay.
So during the summer, we had a good test on the booster.
Yes. Yep.
Except booster station, we had a leaky mechanical seal. It's going to be roughly probably 50,000 to fix that ish. So I haven't try and sparse out things I request. The pump still works. It just shoots water.
It's like every other council I ask
Yeah.
for big expense.
Yeah, I did
Is
have.
there any logic in us moving on that now before they work on that well so that it's fixed prior to us shutting our well down? Or are you thinking?
I just have to review that with. I'll review that with Chris and find out kind of what we got on the budget because we've got this other well upgrade going on and. But yeah, I mean now would be the time if they can get it done within the next 2 weeks to get that mechanical seal replaced and before we take it back up again. I mean it's probably not that the mechanical seal's been leaking since I've been here. So I don't know how long it's been leaking and it still works. It just shoots water everywhere, but eventually it will give out and not work. So. But
And
we
that's all ours, right? That's not.
Yeah, that's
share.
all ours. And the way it works, the booster station has 2 pumps in it, and we can only pump one at a time. So they alternate each time. I alternate which one runs. And so, I mean, worst case scenario, if one of them did go down, we still have the other one to pump with. Plus, I can open a bypass. So while we're pumping water to our tank to serve the upper part of the city, I can bypass the pumps and feed more water to the lower part of the city without pumping. So. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as fire goes, I think that's all in Public Works. As far as fire goes, you're all invited to the appreciation dinner. I know we didn't get all the RSVPs back. I was hearing from our RSVP guru. So, but we're expecting all the council to be there Thursday night at 6:30.
Who is the RSVP guru?
Rachel.
With long speeches prepared.
Well, it's
Well, we eat.
It's the least I can do since I was so rude in RSVPing. I really thought I did, but
I resent something?
Yes, you even replied to Doral's text.
I'll send everybody a text inviting the council and ask to RSVP by the 7th.
Oh.
Because I won't be able to be there, and I'm sorry. So tell them all I greatly appreciate them, and I've said it multiple times. But I'm going to go with my friends.
Well, Rachel came in here in person.
Send Mylan.
Oh, I could send mine.
Yes, you could.
The best you're going to eat coming out of Eureka. So. And I'm not lying.
Same places.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
That's all I-
Thank you.
I'll see if Mylan's available. That's a good point.
Yeah, we like you.
Okay, Wayne.
I do like him.
Any code enforcement news?
I've been down to the Luntz house.
It's a weekly update.
Mention no names, Wayne.
Yeah.
That's
Unless
correct.
it's Janet, then you can mention it.
I was joking for the public record.
We all know it's her. It's okay.
We're doing some financial issues that we may want to consider updating some of our financial behind that, and I'll this week on it just for you to review and look at it and show you where we're headed with that.
There was something in the legislature, I should look and see if it passed, but it was on what you can do as a city if somebody's not paying certain bills. I gotta figure out, I gotta remember in my brain where that was. Out of 1,000 bills, I just can't remember them all, but there was something out about cities being able to come back and have certain action for bills not paid to the city.
There's a provision in our late paying the water bill, not responding to notices. The city has it. That's one of the few instances. That to
Thanks, Wayne. All right, so reports. I had my SESD meeting this morning, and there's nothing to speak of. The MAG and COG meetings, I mentioned this to Ted, just in terms, and it's no surprise. I mean, you know, there's a lot of organizations that are concerned about funding, and so they did talk at some length about, like, Meals on Wheels is actually one that they're really struggling to keep afloat. So, but
Really?
yeah, they must have gotten at least a sizable chunk that came, whether directly or indirectly, from federal sources. But that's kind of the new era that we live in, which I do support. I think that we do need to be responsible in how tax dollars are spent. So
I know it seems like some things are getting cut and then they're bringing them back when they realize.
yeah, kind of
So hopefully,
fits and starts a little bit.
Meals on Wheels, I think, is something that's worth money.
Yeah, well, there are opportunities to donate if anyone, seriously, they did ask for a
Really?
private donation. So if you want that information, I can find out where to direct you. So just let me know.
Maybe send it to me and I can go put it in the newsletter and send it to the community.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good call. Okay. That's it for me. Councilmember Hilliard.
We haven't had another board meeting since my last update, though we will soon. But one thing, just as kind of a reminder there, with it being spring and having the spring cleanup, if you have any, like, chemicals, fertilizer, paint, really anything hazardous that you don't know what to do with, please don't just chuck it in your garbage can. You can take it to the transfer station and they will take it from you and put it in the proper location. And that is a service that is provided there.
They charge extra, is it or is it same weight?
I think it's if you bring more than X amount, then you're charged.
And they do like
So,
universal waste, like computers and TVs and
Yes.
stuff. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So
That's important to people, for people to know.
So
for
this
sure.
is a technical question you might not know the answer, but if you have a paint can and you've used every drop of paint and it's all dried out, you still have to go to special.
no, that's not liquid hazard. So
Okay.
yep, it's mostly predominantly your liquids, but also there's some, fertilizer.
That would be a
Fertilizer is
really
combustible.
good
So-
article for the newsletter, because people are going to clean up with spring cleaning, and so they're going to be saying, "Oh, this is old fertilizer, old paint. I'm going to get new stuff," and so they just chuck it. So this would be a good thing for you to put in.
Yeah.
And then we're making bombs.
No, we're not making One thing actually per your statement there, one thing that's very important to understand, and Ted will appreciate this one. If you have any device, everything from cell phones to battery packs for drills or even larger, that's a lithium ion, you cannot throw it in your garbage can, because when it gets any sense of compaction or crushing at all, it starts a fire. And so that's why we have such a robust fire suppression system in the new transfer station, is
Maybe another-
predominantly
Another article from
due
TED Talk.
to lithium ion. Now, if you have, yeah, we track your garbage, Jody, don't worry. If you have any of those, also take those with you and just let them know, and they'll just take them and dispose of them correctly. So not an additional fee for that. I took a hoverboard the other day. One of my sons was done with it, and so I threw that over in the lithium bin. So something to just think about in that regard. But
So
that's
you just pull up to
Good
the
to
same
know.
place and just say, this is the lithium batteries, or this is half a thing of paint, or whatever.
So if you pull into the kiosk, they'll ask you if you have, tires, TVs, fridges, anything like that, anything too special. But if you pull up and say, hey, I've got some hazardous waste as well, they will ask you quantities. Typically, do you have anything greater than a 5-gallon bucket? Now, that's per vessel, not per total. So you can't bring a huge drum of something without being charged.
Don't mix them, please. For the love of God, don't mix them.
Don't mix them. But I'm saying
that
if
in
you
the
have 21-gallon things of paint, that's 1 gallon times 20, not 20 gallons, if that makes sense. So they're looking per vessel what that size is.
Okay.
So not necessarily total quantity.
Quantity.
So it's a little tricky, but you'll then pull from the scale house over into the transfer station, and there you'll meet somebody also.
Yeah.
And there you'll tell them, and they'll direct you to the right, towards the east, and there you'll be able to that's a good thing too. But you can then dispose of everything there. But they're very, very helpful in directing you where you need to go.
I've used them many times just because of you.
Good, thank you.
Well, and
That's it,
there's a
yeah.
lot of surprisingly hazardous things that we just use in our household. So that's good information.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hutchings?
We have not had another Mount Nebo Water Association meeting since the last time, and I have not gotten the minutes for South Valley to go through that for the meeting that I missed, so I don't have any updates.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kinnison?
Everything's going well at dispatch. Just wanted to give you an interesting number. This year, the monies we have paid for dispatch services, 88% of those costs were police and 12% was for fire. So just kind of, we're very efficient on the fire side. Just not with that. No.
Oh, I thought you were saying we're a community of narcs or something.
So
but-
most of it's for police. We've also got a first draft for next year's fees, and it looks like so far ours would go up about $4,000 a year. Other cities are really getting nailed. I mean, multiple hundreds of thousands. So
Based on the number of calls.
this is a first draft too. Yeah, and number of citizens and so on. But yeah, so everything's going well otherwise at dispatch. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Lott?
I don't have anything other than, worked with the finance committee. We have a possible the way for Woodland Hills Days, our last year's committee members are going to stay in place, and Callie's, and they're going to train a new one. So we'll actually kind of have two sets. They want to kind of have overlap. So
Great.
we have a name in mind. We were waiting just to make sure they didn't get called in as
Some ecclesiastical changes that
Yes.
recently took place.
and we were waiting for that before we reached out. So we'll do that. And then
Well, now we know 3 people who it's not, so.
I know. And then also I'm meeting tomorrow night again on our history topic. We're actually going to get rolling. We've come up with the topics and some of the questions and the people. So We're just gonna sit down and assign everything, and then we're gonna start doing interviews.
Awesome.
So we're meeting with that tomorrow night. So I've got like city 3 nights. Maybe.
Lucky you, yeah. Well, and thanks, we conveyed thanks to Mike and Aaron and Tim, but also thanks to you and to Chris for all your efforts
Yeah, we met
related
3
to that.
times and did a lot of homework in between.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it was very useful information.
We wanted to make sure that they did, we did a good job.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes, so we met today, and one thing that I already have given to Janet, they're having what they're calling Wolfstock on Saturday, May 31st, which is a fun run, an adoption, a carnival, walking the dogs, things like that, that they're going to have this big fundraiser type thing. So that'll be fun. So hopefully some of our residents participate. I emailed Mayor Yu and Chris kind of the tentative budget we passed today, and our allocation fees for this year will just be over 3,000 for our city. It's based on same kind of like with dispatch, the number of pets, when they come, etc. And then they also gave a projection for next year, which will be closer to 5. So
They're
I
seeing
guess
some trending. Is that
just
what it is, or
just the costs are going up, and also looking at this spay and neuter program, etc. So I sent both of those projections to you. They do have clinics in other cities. If our residents are interested, we don't really do them in our city because we don't get a great participation. You can go on the Utah Valley Animal Shelter website, and it will show where those clinics are. If you want any, shots, etc. A lot of people up here already have their own vet, so they just go there. But if they're interested, and then statistically, they have a lot of dogs. We had a 91% save rate for dogs, 60% save rate for cats last year with their adoptions and return rate. 50% of all dogs get returned to the right owner, but only 5% of cats because people don't get the cats checked. So although we don't require it, it's something to look into because there's a lot of people who pick up animals thinking that, oh, I'll just take it to the shelter and they'll find their home, and they really don't. So they get adopted out to somebody else.
Okay.
So
Well, I was going to say the save rate, or what did you call it?
yeah, they have a save rate.
That seemed like a pretty good. I mean, I know that
Mm-hmm.
probably ideally it would be 0, or not 0, but 100%.
Well, and a lot of times save rates, because people will bring animals in that have gotten hit, right, by a car. So they'll take it to the shelter, and some of those animals will die.
Right.
Just because their injuries are too bad, right? And so, or they're really sick and there's just nothing that can, it's just like going to a hospital. Not every person who goes to the hospital gets saved.
Right.
It's the same with the shelter.
So is that relating to adoption then?
That's a save rate is
like
what they
rescuing the
have is
injured?
they call them animals that have been cleared. So animals that come through the shelter and either are adopted or taken back to their
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought of.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, Wayne?
He's talking and with Janet, I'm thinking it might kind of be an interesting thing on Woodland Hills Day for them to bring over 3 or 4 of their animals to see if the people coming to Woodland Hills Day would be interested in adopting them. And it might spontaneously or bring about a little bit of interest and also promote what they do over there with the animals. Just a thought.
Hey, that's
Yeah.
a good suggestion.
Oh, I can bring it up to them.
Okay. Upcoming council meetings, we've got our town hall meeting, a couple of weeks. I think we pretty much have it mapped out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jody, you don't seem all that confident.
Well, and we met as the community development team to put together kind of what their presentation is going to be. They were going to talk with Chris about what kind, and Jody about, or Lori, I mean, on what kind of graphics that we're already going to have up there for our regular town hall, and so that they'd know what to supplement with regards to some of the survey results. So they're working on that.
Okay, good.
Any survey results? We hadn't talked about that. Did you, were you?
No, they are, not
Okay.
the city.
Okay.
That's what the contractor is going to do.
Right, yeah, I honestly was not intending to, I mean, I'll
Yeah,
talk to
they'll
Chris
put-
about this. I wasn't intending to do any visuals, nothing
Usually
comes
we
to
do
mind. but-
something that, like in past town halls, we've had, this is where the revenue comes, like a pie chart type thing. We've had
Yeah.
those in the past.
I don't know if we were going to talk about budget, were we?
I wasn't intending to. I was just gonna
I-
I was gonna do a survey of items discussed in staff meeting and then defer to
Okay.
everyone that actually does the work to explain what we actually do and then handing it over to development. So,
Okay.
yeah,
They just probably will then bring some visuals of some of the survey stuff, so.
okay, perfect. All right, then why don't we,
I have not, maybe I missed it, but I have not received the results that he said he was going to.
Nobody has.
So
I'll
can you
see.
please ask him,
Uh-huh.
because I would really like to have that. So I have a copy as well.
Okay. I didn't realize it didn't get sent to everybody else.
okay, well, why don't we reconvene at 8:25? Okay, we are, I'll call this meeting to order. Councilmember Malkovich, will you offer the invocation? And Councilmember Lunt, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet as a council for the city of Woodland Hills. We're grateful for our residents and for all that they do to make our community a great place to live, for their service to each other and their service to the city. We're grateful for our employees and all that the work that they put in management as our city grows and changes. We're grateful for the safety and the protection that is awarded us with our beautiful nature. We're grateful for the mountain that we live on. Please bless us this day that as we make decisions that affect our residents and our staff, that we can do so mindfully, that we can take the information that has been given to us and make decisions that are beneficial to the city overall. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Please stand and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, public comment.
Today's the day we hear
Looking
from
at
other-
you.
Okay. Rome, this is your big chance. Okay, nobody online?
Somebody offered me a senior citizen discount.
Lucky you.
The first
30%
time,
off.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
first time you get that free soda at Wendy's, and then you're like, no.
Yeah, well, you have 2 minutes and 45 seconds still if you
Yeah.
want to embellish that story.
I was not happy.
Yeah,
It was, it was for 55 and older, and I'm just barely over that. But still, I didn't think I looked like I was, but that's okay.
Well, I don't know that this body can help with that. but,
You can't. It's all right.
Most of us
we
commiserate
could
with it, but-
Right.
I just wanted to give you more fodder to make fun of me. So
Yeah,
there you
well,
go.
no, we would
Nobody's ever offered that to me.
You got to turn 40 first.
Yeah.
I do. Next year. Next year.
Nice. All right. Well, on that note, we'll close the public comment.
Okay.
Okay, consent agenda, item 16.
Earl,
The
you
Feb-
wanted to say something?
I do.
Oh,
What
yeah.
about the minutes?
Yes.
I want to compliment Jody on writing some really good minutes. I especially liked the wildland crew section of those minutes where you described everything that John and Ted were talking about. Anyway, you wrote well. In fact, I understood your writing more than I understood them. So anyway, I just want to compliment you, especially in putting John's comments about meeting the stars there in California while he was there. That was a good line, and I appreciated that. So
Okay.
read the minutes this time; they're quite enjoyable. Anyway,
Well said. Okay, thank you. Now, will someone approve them?
I would like to do that.
Okay, that's a motion by Councilmember Kinnison,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Hutchings. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Decision on employee health insurance, item 17. Okay,
I'll make a motion that we approve funding. I know the ultimate decision is still on the mayor, but we have to put the funding, right? For the PEHP number 5 in the Summit Network with the change as far as the city making a contribution of $3,000, which the employee can determine if they want it to go to an HSA or an HRA. Right?
perfect. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, so a motion by Councilmember Lunt, seconded by Councilmember Hilliard. Councilmember Malkovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard?
Yes.
Councilmember Lunt?
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison?
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchings?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries. Item 18, authorization for the mayor to sign the contract with WCG for the trail feasibility grant.
I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second.
A motion by Councilmember Hilliard, seconded by Councilmember Malkovich. Councilmember Hutchings?
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison?
Yes.
Councilmember Lunt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard?
Yes.
Councilmember Malkovich?
Yes.
Okay, that one carries. Item 19, ordinance 2025-10, updates to Title 11 subdivision ordinance.
I will make a motion to. Waive the reading.
Come
Thank
on.
goodness.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's a motion by Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Hutchings. Councilmember Hutchings.
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison.
Yes.
Councilmember Lunt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard.
I'd like Jody to read it. No, I'm kidding. Yes.
Okay, and Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes.
That motion carries. We do not have any large purchases.
Yep.
So
Can I just update on one thing that came to us this afternoon real quick? I don't think it needs to be voted by council, but we did get resolution on the bonding for Summit Creek. They've agreed to our $339,000. So we will be sending their bonds back.
Oh.
I think Jody, you were CC'd on that.
Yeah, I'll put that
We've been
on.
working on that for like 2 years.
Yeah, no, well done.
I plan on
Okay,
putting
so-
that on the next budget, or next agenda present, just so we have it on.
Yeah, I'm not sure it has to be voted on since it's, oh, I see. Just to be safe. Okay, good idea.
Okay, no, that's, I know that's been a long time in coming, so thanks for getting that taken
Yeah.
care of.
Well, thanks to Jody and Ted. It's been a big effort by everybody, but glad it worked out.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, and there's not any surplus equipment that we're selling either. So lastly, item 22, resolution 2025-08, the check disbursements.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Hutchings,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Lunt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Lastly, adjournment unless I don't see any need for a closed session, but certainly open to suggestions if anybody feels otherwise. Okay, well then,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Councilmember Malkovich,
I'll second that.
seconded by Councilmember Hilliard. We're adjourned.
Yay.
Thank you.
Enjoy that, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
We'll see you guys.
See you, Chris.
Seems only-
Thanks. When
Do you
we
want
were
me
in-
to let PHP know, or do you want, or us, Miller Wade know that we're gonna go with PHP? Would you like me to send that out to her?
Yeah, I think that we don't want to delay on that. So,
I don't want to delay, but we probably want to find out if we need to also do the vision and the dental at the same time. And if so, we might need to pull staff together to talk about that tomorrow.
okay, good suggestion. So, yeah, before we, so there might be some individual decisions then that need to be made with respect to whether they want the vision and dental included in their coverage, I guess, with the PEHP. So
Yeah, but I guess we can let Select Health know that we're not gonna go back with them and close that portion out, and that we can get with January, which is her name, and
So-
talk about vision and dental.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Janet. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I'll
Did
do that.
you get the answer you were looking for? Did I answer? So yes, I would say let's let Select Health